all in entire spring. So
Okay, and then I'm just going to hit record and we'll drop in everybody.
so Ben, I would have worn a blue shirt. I was thinking about wearing my customary blue shirt. So of course you're wearing a white shirt. I'm in my lumberjack mode.
I was gonna say that today you two did not coordinate.
Yeah. Sure. All right, I'll let everyone in. One moment. Good evening, everybody. We'll start the meeting in just a moment or two. I'm expecting a few more council members to join us. But we are live. We're streaming to YouTube and we're being recorded. Superintendent Kelly McGuire, we have two of you this evening.
It's just this one.
All
This
right.
is the real Kelly McGuire.
Okay, so we'll have to change that. All right, I'm removing the other Kelly. Oh, someone just brought it back.
Is it the purple Kelly McGuire that's the legitimate Kelly McGuire, or is it?
I just removed the other Kelly McGuire.
Do we have another Chen Kwok also? I saw.
He might have two. All right, and Chen. Chen, do you have two accounts? Okay. All right, I think all the, oh, Lupe, 1 second. Okay. I think all the council members are now co-hosts. All right, thank you everyone for, well, first of all, let me say Happy New Year and thank you for all attending on this very cold evening in New York City. I know that you could be doing other things, but I'm glad to start off the year with our community, our District 2 community, and then those of you who are from other districts as well. So welcome and Happy New Year again. I also want to, before we do roll call, I just want to say to just make an announcement to all the teachers, administration, staff, superintendents, everyone who's making it possible in these hard, difficult times to teach to our students, to be there for them in this difficult time. You know, so we're seeing 75% or higher in our district on average of students attending schools, and it's a tremendous effort. And we recognize it and we honor that. So thank you for everyone, custodians, you know, everybody who's making it possible for our children to learn in this environment. So thank you again. Janie, I hope you're ready now. If we can do roll call.
Yes, we can do roll call. Okay. Okay, Robin Broshi.
Here.
Kaushik Das.
Here. Sorry, my screen will be on a second.
Where is it? Daniela Igorov.
Here.
Lupe Hernandez.
Here.
Robin Kelleher.
Here.
Chen Kwok.
Here.
Benjamin Morton.
Here.
Ushma Neal.
Here.
Janie's here. Leonard Silverman.
Yeah.
Lily Wu.
Here.
Gabriela Calabia.
Here.
Great. We're all here. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. So the next item on our agenda for this evening is the presentation of resolutions. We have one resolution on our agenda. It's a new version of or an updated version of Resolution 186. It's titled 186A on a more collegial partnership between DOE and ACS. Who will present to that?
I can, unless Lupe or Robin, you wanted to. I don't feel strongly. Okay. This was something that we brought up and discussed fairly extensively last time, so I will go through this fairly quickly, which is that this has everything to do with students and absence reporting, and that absence reporting then being used as a means by which to deploy ACS, the Administration for Children's Services. And so it's purely a resolution trying to make sure that absence reporting is done properly, that there's appropriate trainings of absence reporting for those agents within schools, and that this is not weaponized against families. So in the interim month since we last talked about this, Robin Kelleher made some helpful suggestions, as did Len Silverman. So I hope you've had a chance to read it over, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have about this. It is written very specifically to be targeted to populations and groups who have a medically relevant need for remote education or absence. This is not a means by which we are asking anybody to vet remote education.
Did any of the other co-sponsors want to add anything? All right. Thank you very much, Ushma. We were going to have a program presentation from the SCA. They were unable to attend today. The SCA is the School Construction Authority. We will be having a community meeting tomorrow for that presentation. So we won't have a program presentation for this evening. So that's the start of our first public speaker session. I've put a link if you want, if any parent or any member of our community would like to speak. You have 2 minutes. I put the link on our chat. It's also on our homepage. I believe we have 6 people signed up. Janie, since we have only 6 people, can I make a motion to give each person who's attending today 3 minutes to speak?
Sure.
And
Hold on, I have to go.
Second.
second, thank you. So we would have, can we do that, Jennifer, by a vote by hand, or do we have to take a
Making a
formal vote?
motion, so
Yeah,
all those you need to do all those in favor, opposed, and abstain.
All right. Janie, can you do that?
You could have people raise their hands, so you don't have to do a roll call vote.
So who approves the 3-minute change?
Chen seconded.
No, Chen seconded. Okay. Just raise your hand and I can.
Oh.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
You need to still do opposed and abstain.
Correct.
Oh, we still have to go through the vote?
Yep.
Okay,
But
who?
they-
Yeah,
Yeah.
you have to do everything.
Okay, who approves the 3-minute change in speaking time? Robin Broshi?
No.
No.
You
You
did,
already
you
did it.
did
You already
the
did
approve.
that.
Who does not approve?
They just have to
Who's
raise their
in
hand.
favor? Who's not? And then abstain. Yes, no, abstain.
Just did a favor vote. So we had a show of hands for those who agree with 3 minutes. We just did that.
Now you need to do all those opposed.
Okay, is anyone opposed? Does anyone abstain?
I
Yes.
abstain.
Leonard Silverman abstains. Okay.
And Robin.
Miller.
So we have 3 abstentions. Is that right?
I think it was 2.
Which Robin? Was it Robin Kelleher?
Yeah.
And Robin Broshi was yes?
I was yes.
Okay, so then it's 2, sorry. So it passes.
Janie, are you going to be dropping the names in the chat of the order?
Yeah, let me just do that right now. Sorry.
Okay, sorry for all the work here.
No, I was trying to get the timer to work and it's not working. Let me see. All right. So the first speaker is Jaden. And you'll have 3 minutes. I'll just let you know when at 2:50, at 2 minutes and 50 seconds, I'll just give you a heads up.
I
So-
can't find Jade.
Okay.
Is Assemblymember Epstein here? Under the name Joanna Sanchez, maybe we want to give the Assemblymember an opportunity to speak.
Yeah, I'm gonna. Can we just? I mean, I don't know about giving preference to certain people. I'm a little concerned about that. There's nothing in our bylaws. I mean, I know we do it sometimes as a courtesy, but you know.
Well, we only have our first 2 people who are signed. First 3 people who've signed up aren't on our Zoom call here. So I think let's just run through the remaining 3.
Okay, so Dimitri is not on, Hunter's not on.
No.
So the next person will be Max Chin.
Yeah. Okay, we have Max here. All right, Max, you're unmuted.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for allowing me to speak. I just, again, I just want to echo the message in the beginning that we do recognize all the efforts that the administrators, the schools, principals, teachers have taken to teach our kids in this in this pandemic, in this environment. And I'm here just to again implore the CEC members and parents who are in attendance to continue to voice out, especially in especially in these moments. Demand accountability, see to see actions, to see solutions from the Department of Education and the new administration as it relates to the two crises that our children are facing in schools today. And that's basically the rise in COVID positive cases in schools within the last week from their return from break, and the school staffing shortage. I've seen articles where the new administration's prediction that classrooms will normalize is not a solution. If the new administration believes that the safest place for a child in the school is in the school, then it needs to take immediate action and to continually to make sure it is safe. Last December, the chancellor's letter said that they were going to increase testing for both vaccinated and unvaccinated. Yet this is not something we're seeing. We've read or seen the Twitter posts and articles where a parent shared that only 12 students out of 305 were tested. That's 3.9% of the student body instead of the supposed 20%. We've read the viral Reddit posts by a high school student that has described the situation as being beyond control and that there's no learning occurring. So we need to see action. We need these solutions. We need accountability. If the Department of Education says they're going to do more tests, they've got to do more tests. They need to address the staffing shortage, especially, and they need to act quickly before it's too late. We've already seen the negative impact of kids of not having a normal classroom. Creativity and short-term solutions by teachers, staff, and principals, they're only a Band-Aid. Every day when kids are not in a normal classroom setting, it's hurting them. So we need to see action. We need to see resources. We need to see solutions, and it's something that we need to see now and not later. And thank you.
Great. The next speaker is Tom Rockledge.
I don't see Thomas or Tom.
Okay, the next speaker is Tiffany Ma.
Hi, everyone. So I've agreed with my community, the Upper East Side Mamas of those 40,000 moms on the Facebook group, that on days where the monthly meetings are not as busy, if I can come and just take their collective interests and issues that I've heard that month, if we have the time to hear it. One thing I would like to note is that in the weeks right at the end of December and the beginning of January, there was massive anxiety about the rise of Omicron and the having to return to school on January 3rd because of the lack of testing. And one issue that came up is that in District 2, should there be families that are fortunate enough that they can supplement the education at home, what I've been hearing is that they would like to see that there's an ability to have elective absence, even where there's not a health condition, because of the anxiety of the families, because of the high risk of the elderly living with them, because of non-vaccinated younger siblings. They believe this would reduce the traffic in schools for the people who absolutely need schools to be open. So they would like something more formal than simply speaking with their teachers and with the parent coordinator, because it's not an official excuse. So I've heard that if they're capable of having it, they would like to see that announced. And additionally, in the neighborhood, our on the more east end, Representative Julie Menon has seen a rise in anti-Semitism, in swastikas being found in Citibank, and we've seen the Bronx fire. We see massive employment termination. So there's a lot of other interruptions during this. Every time there's a rise in pandemic, we know that it's disproportionately impacting certain people, and that is mothers. So there's a call for respecting the mother's choice in terms of not having mandatory school at this time, especially if they're capable of doing the curriculum at home. So there's that voice. And then in terms of in light of appreciating the superintendents and everyone that's working with us, I did have an upshot of complaints last Friday from teachers saying that in the height of the snow day, where the attendance was 44% across the city by 4:00 p.m., for teachers, it was still that they were mandated to come into school, meaning they left their homes at 4 a.m., risked traffic accidents, and had to get nannies for their own kids, which they can't afford. And if they were out of sick days, then they had to leave their kids alone at home and come in on the day because their own kids' schools were closed, and that there is no forgiveness of giving them an elective paid day like they have to use from their sick bank. So those are the issues that we saw on our page come up across the last 2-3 weeks. I thought I'd report it. There's no call for anything. It's just information, and that's it.
Thank you, Tiffany. Janie, I think we have 2 new signups.
Yes, hang on. Where did it go? The next person is, where is it? Michael Markowitz.
Michael's having trouble logging in. Can you?
I'm in on the iPhone.
Oh,
Thanks.
you are in. Sorry.
Your pre-registration needs to allow people to use the button more than one time. Otherwise, there's no way to switch from an iPhone to a real computer. But that's not what I signed up to talk about. I'm here because I'm a former parent, still a parent, but the kids are now in college, and a former 3-term CEC member. And I understand the anxiety and the confusion and the concern. I get all that. I get the parent conflicts. I get the deluge of information, misinformation, partial information. But I want to just leave you with a couple of high-level concepts here and encourage you to kind of look at the broad picture the way I'm trying to look at it myself for my family. First, testing. Any testing that's not truly random sampling is not scientifically meaningful. I come from a family of scientists. I'm a licensed engineer. You can't just ask the people to take the test who feel like taking the test. That's not going to be a meaningful answer. The fact of the matter is that New Yorkers who have been tested are running about 20% positivity rate. It's on the way down, but that's still inordinately high. During the first wave, the government scientists were saying that we want to see a positivity rate of, I think it was something super low, like 3%, to be assured that the virus isn't continuing to spread. So far, we've been really lucky that Omicron, while highly contagious, is not highly deadly. But it is vitally, vitally important to stamp out the virus in the wild, because the next mutation, Nebulon or Zebulon, we might not be so lucky. So that's testing and big germ perspective. As far as kids in the school, kids at home, it might be true that the kids are relatively safe in the schools, but that's no reason to drop our guard or to dishonor parents who are concerned. So I support encouraging all kids to get vaxxed, tested, and wear masks, because other than parent concerns, that's really where the science is driving this. Now, as far as parent concerns go, to me, it broadly breaks down into 2 categories. Your kids tested positive and got sent home, or for whatever parent reasons, you want to keep your kid at home. whatever those reasons may be. And it's just not sufficient for the mayor to say all kids have to be in school, therefore we don't have plan B. Because there's two other categories of kids that the city needs to be responsive to. The ones who've been sent home, quarantined, the parents want to have them back as soon as possible. And the parents who, for whatever reason, want to keep their kids at home. So to have a system that says no remote learning is just not realistic. There's going to be some huge fraction of roughly 1 million kids
10 seconds.
who are not being well served by that. And the very last is, I heard a rumor this council is considering a no mask in school policy. And please feel free to contact me directly so I could help you out with the science. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I believe Lilibeth is the last one. Is that right, Jenny?
Yes, that's correct.
Hi, everybody. Happy New Year to everyone. Thanks for giving me a few minutes to talk. I just wanted to bring up 2 points. One is to kind of piggyback off the testing conversation. My personal experience, I just got past COVID. My kids got COVID and we all had COVID for 2 weeks, one of them very sick. The primary concern I have with the policy that's in place right now, and I'm not sure as a CEC we can do much, but hopefully we can push back to some degree, is right now random rapid tests are being given to children. So those are done, those come back negative, the child goes back to school. My daughter's rapid came negative. 24 hours later, she was positive from her PCR. So now if I wasn't that parent that said, I'm gonna keep my child home because something seems kind of funky and off, I would have essentially sent my child back with the perception that she's fine to be around the children and potentially expose everybody the way she exposed all of us at home. So I'd like to see us push back as far as the accuracy of the tests being provided to our kids, because I don't believe the rapid tests are accurate just from personal experience. The most effective tool is PCR, and just exactly what that means and what we're being given. And then 2, I know it's all over the news, but I can't help but think that some of these children and even some parents really didn't know how to get out of a fire. It seems like a simple skill. It seems like a conversation that we're having in school, but even asking my own children, well, what do you do if you see smoke? Do you stay in the room? Do you get low? Do you know what to do? And just that information is not present. I remember as a kid growing up and having these vehicles that simulate smoke, that simulate fire, that we kind of practiced what to do, that we were able to kind of smell it, see it, and really kind of live it. I tried for a number of years to get something like that for our school, but it just wasn't financially possible to do so. And then the very ones that we do have around the city were just not accessible in the way that they should be. So I'd like to see more conversation regarding fire safety, not just doing the drills, but something a little bit more age appropriate, more real, to really get these kids to skill and parents. So thank you.
Great. I think I saw Hunter there log in.
Ben, can I just respond quickly while we're waiting for Hunter?
All right, he's here. Or we don't respond directly to.
Okay. I just wanted to let Lily Beth know that that was something that came up today in our FACE meeting.
Okay.
And
all right. So yeah, that's important. Sure.
It's just important that the fire department is willing and like outwardly trying to set up sessions with schools and with communities and buildings. Jennifer Greenblatt has the information, and you can reach out to us individually, and we can help facilitate that because we agree. So thank you for bringing that up.
Could I answer what Robin just said? So I'm going
hello?
to send,
Yeah, just one moment, Hunter.
I'm sending all the information out to the parent coordinators to give them the opportunity to set it up in each of our schools. So stay tuned. This is a big issue citywide, and I know a lot of buildings are now looking into it and doing things to ensure that all apartments do have, because doors are required to automatically close to make sure that doors automatically close. It was supposed to be done in June of 2021. And supers and or resident managers had to attest to it. But because of COVID, I think maybe some of them didn't do what was required to do.
Thank you, Jennifer. Hunter?
Yeah, Hunter, you have 3 minutes. We have less speakers, so everyone has 3 minutes.
Okay, can I actually move to speak in the second session?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
So that concludes our speaking session 1. There's no other speakers.
All right, thank you, Janie. All right. So welcome everyone again. I'm going to just make some brief notes because we're still learning about our new chancellor, or we have a new chancellor in New York City, David Banks, and the new administration, Mayor Eric Adams. Excuse me. So we're all learning what policies will be implemented, I guess, in the next few weeks and months ahead. Besides the fire safety issue, which we discussed earlier today, middle school, I hope everyone is aware that middle school admissions are now open. We've received reports from families and parents that there are some technical glitches. I'm hoping they're solved in the coming days. I think middle school admissions goes through February, so I'm sure it'll get resolved. We have 3 meetings coming up this week. We have a busy week. One of them being the School Construction Authority, and we'll be presenting Joshua Adams from the School Construction Authority. Will be presenting a capital plan, the amendment to the 5-year capital plan, and that will be during tomorrow's zoning and capital committee meeting from 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. roughly. The public is welcome to ask questions, as well as council members. If you can't attend, council members, I know this was kind of rushed, this meeting, please email me your questions and I will, and anyone in the public as well, and I will ask them for sure. The second meeting that's coming up in students in temporary housing, and I believe maybe Ushma will discuss that later in the session. And the final meeting is a joint public hearing meeting. Our liaison for PS 111 and City Knoll. City Knoll is looking to co-locate, extend its co-location at PS 111. And our liaison, Chen Kwok, will be representing us at the joint public hearing. These links to all these pages, to all these meetings are available on our homepage on CECD2.net. All right. Up next is our superintendent, and I know he has some exciting announcements from new members who are new District 2 leaders coming aboard. So thank you. Welcome, Superintendent Kelly McGuire.
Thanks so much, Ben. Thank you. And I am very honored to be joined tonight by both our new Deputy Superintendent, Reggie Higgins, and our new District Special Instructional Liaison, also a district leadership position, Yanette Bueno Gonzalez. Toward the end of my piece here, you're gonna be able to hear from them a little bit, but I am gonna just start us off with a short share. I know that there is a lot going on in our schools right now, and I just want to thank everybody for all that they've shared in regard to just appreciations for our principals and teachers, cafeteria staff, everybody. They've just done a really incredible job. The meetings that we are involved in started happening over the December break. So we, after the 25th, there were kind of like daily meetings that were updating us about how it is that we were planning to return, answering questions, working out kinks and procedures. So a lot has been happening since right after, actually during the December break. So, but Tonight, I'll just share a little bit of data on some updates that we have in the district, as well as talk about some of our health protocols. Ben, you shared a little bit in regard to enrollment, but I'll touch on a few other things. I did want to highlight some of the work that we're doing around teaching and learning. Even in this height of Omicron, we are pursuing work to try to help to improve teaching and learning in our schools, as well as support our teachers. We have some exciting news that was approved at the last PEP meeting regarding PS 150, and then I'll turn it over to Reggie and Yanette just to share a little bit about who they are and their role here in the district. But just to start off, so our, some people had, mentioned a little bit about the challenge and the difficulty of running schools in these times when we have absences that are due to illness, snow days this past week, and just a whole lot of concern. But I can say that our school leaders are continuing to run safe and productive school environments. We've been in all of these schools that are listed here at the bottom over the past couple of days. And I can say that in each and every one of those schools, as you walk around, certainly teachers and principals are interrupted by the need to respond to kids who might be positive, or parents who might be concerned, or teachers who might be concerned. But it's actually quite amazing to be able to visit these schools and feel and see the productive place that classrooms really are, and the safe place that classrooms really are, and to just see how happy kids are in those spaces. So it is a really tense time. But for children, I think that our teachers and school leaders are doing an amazing job of creating the kind of environment that kids want to go to every single day. So our District 2, though, attendance has dropped a couple of points over the past 6 weeks, and that's not a surprise. But while it's dropped a couple of points, the attendance rate in general since the start of the year does remain high. We are seeing some difference in some of our schools. We have schools that have high rates of students who live in temporary housing or receive free or reduced lunch. In those schools, the attendance rates for students are somewhere between 70 to 75%. And then in the district overall, we're seeing more of a 85 to 90% average across the district. So a lot of variation there. But we are concentrating a lot of our supports in trying to help those schools that are in the greatest needs, reaching out to them, doing what we can to help to secure substitutes, deploying our district staff to go and work in some of those schools in different capacities. And so we are doing what we can. The staff and teacher attendance has been cyclical. I'll talk a little bit more in a second about how it is that the Department of Health and Hygiene are doing reviews of rates of COVID-19 being reported to the Situation Room. I'm not saying that there is spread that's happening in schools. I think it's very difficult to identify when and where spread is occurring, and whether or not that is because of what's happening in schools, or whether that's because of what's happening in the rest of the district and city. But we do kind of see these cycles where a school will see 35% of their teachers absent for a period of time, and then a few days later that will have dropped back down to say 10%. And so this is there's not kind of a consistent absence that's happening across our schools, except for to say in our higher need schools with our students who have higher need populations, that we are seeing a lower attendance rate. I don't have it up as a slide, but just to start off, this is that when there was a new rule that was released today in regard to when a school or might have to enter a closer phase of being examined by test and trace. When a K through 12 school experiences 10 cases in a single classroom, then the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene reports that to our district office and the school. And what we do is that we work together to make sure that protocols are in place and work with other partners, including our custodial engineers, to make sure that all of the mitigation strategies that we can possibly implement are implemented so that spread doesn't occur, and that examination period continues. So a magnifying glass is applied to those schools that might have 10 cases in a single classroom, or in our lower grades, 3K and pre-K. If there are 5 cases in those classrooms, then again, the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene gets involved to conduct a more thorough review of the practices that are happening in those schools. It does not trigger an automatic closure, but it just enters this phase in which we have to make sure that our protocols are in place and then consider next steps to try to help to make sure that all of the strategies are being implemented in the school. But to date, all of our schools have remained entirely open. And when we return to from the new year, a bunch of new policies have been enacted. K-12 schools have been, students have remained in school. If they are exposed, there's no more mandatory quarantine unless they are feeling sick or they test positive on an at-home or PCR test. We are distributing thousands of at-home test kits for children and adults. And I think that that's an important mitigation strategy to add to this conversation, that what we keep telling our principals again and again is that if you have concerns about anybody in your school community, whether they are your teaching staff or your office staff, or the people who work in the cafeteria, or the people who work in the custodial department, or after school programs. If anybody feels sick, then we should distribute, if anybody feels sick or if anybody has been potentially exposed, then we are going to distribute those at-home test kits. This is the time for us to throw everything that we can at the virus. And so this distribution of kits is really important. There is, if an adult in our school does contract COVID-19, then they are required to quarantine for 5 days. They can return on the 6th day wearing a KN95 mask, which are being distributed by our schools. We are awaiting policy that we anticipate coming from the city health officials. That information will trickle from the city to the Department of Education regarding whether or not there is any change to quarantine policy for children, because right now that still remains 10 days if a child tests positive for COVID-19. The Situation Room has moved from this place where we are reporting cases and they're offering that guidance to a place that's really just a system and structure that's really just offering guidance to our school leaders and teachers. It's been really fantastic actually to be able to have them play that role. I know that that was the role that they're playing when they first opened, but in those days leading up to the December break, they were just so overwhelmed with different cases that it was just processing cases and not really being able to be in that support and advisory role. And so they've moved into that, and our principals have been really, really supported by the work that's been happening there. We continue to have school-based PCR testing. The school-based PCR testing is based on a percentage of students in the school. We are testing both vaccinated and unvaccinated students. And again, we are still sending home many, many tests, at-home tests to complement the at-home PCR, or excuse me, the school-based PCR testing that is occurring every week in our schools. And there is this option now too, to be able to test to return if a student was initially tested positive. Children can test, and if they turn up, if they can test, if they have a negative test on the 5th day, then they can actually return on the 8th day back into school. And I will say that one thing is that all of our school-based staff are receiving 2 at-home tests every single week through the month of January, just as a strategy to encourage people to test regularly and to try to get ahead of any virus spread. So again, we're distributing this test. In our district, we are holding regular office hours for principals and school leaders. As people know, these policies are changing very, very quickly to respond to the way that the Omicron variant has impacted our schools. And so we are trying to get ahead of it and really be available to our school leaders. We're trying to get the information as quickly as we can from the Department of Health, so we can share that with our school leaders so that they can make decisions that are impacting their schools. We're trying to document all of that information as well. I mentioned that our district staff has spent the majority of the past couple of weeks in schools doing our best to support the needs of teachers and school leaders. School food has responded. They've really gotten ahead of the potential concern about school staff, cafeteria staff being absent as a result of testing positive for COVID-19. So they're doing some additional preparation of food to make sure that if a member of the cafeteria staff tests positive and can't come in the next day, that the other cafeteria staff member or a substitute can jump in and make sure that there isn't any interruption to food distribution. And then it's just been really fantastic seeing our schools really support each other. Across our district, there are schools that have created flow charts that are much, much easier to follow than some of the other materials that come from the CDC or Department of Health to really guide parents and kids in making the right decision regarding the health screener questions. And a lot of those have been translated into all of the languages that we see here in District 2. So there's just it's a very tough time, but there are a lot of people who are stepping up to help to support each other in this difficult time. We see in the month of January that just pivoting quickly to enrollment, we see in the month of January that kindergarten enrollment, the deadline is January 18th. Again, families can list the schools that they are applying to through their My Schools account. If they need translation services, you can actually apply to kindergarten over the phone. Our middle school application is opened on January 10th. The deadline to apply is March 1st. For this coming fall, the pause on middle school screens are continuing, but there are a couple of programs, dual language programs and art-based programs in the city that will continue to have entrance criteria. And then for our high schools, that application is opening on January 24th. And again, the deadline to apply is March 1st. The city and central office decided to maintain the borough-based priorities. As people may have recalled, the borough priorities were set to be eliminated in this round of applications, but the city and central office have maintained those priorities for the fall. High schools that screen applicants are going to use are still permitted to do so, but have to use multiple measures in order to conduct that screening. The measures include the first semester grades from this year. So if we're talking about this year's 8th graders applying to high school for next year, they have to use the first semester grades from this year, as well as an additional measure. That could be a school project or an essay that is submitted and reviewed by a team of educators centrally, not by the school. But there is going to be more information that's going to be coming out in the month of January regarding the high school application process. So I mentioned that I wanted to just talk a little bit about teaching and learning work that we are leading in our district and that we're seeing happen across our schools. We know that mathematics has been a real focus for our middle schools for a while. And starting back in August of this year, actually starting back in June of last year, we partnered with an organization, Metamorphosis, which is a professional learning organization that many of our schools have worked with for several years. But they have started a middle school math project in which they are focusing specifically on 6th grade math teachers to help to support the transition from elementary school to middle school and really examine math curricula across our middle schools. And we foresee that continuing. Several of our schools are working with a professor from the University of Georgia, Goldie Muhammad, and really working to examine writing and how it is that students can develop and put voice into writing. We're continuing to see an expansion of our arts programs. One of the things that our school leaders were very clear about as we entered this year is that they wanted to make sure that we were accelerating learning for all students in the core content areas, but they also wanted to make sure that they were doing those things that students were really passionate about and gave teachers another way to see into how it is that students were doing, and give students another way to express themselves. So we've seen a huge expansion of arts across our schools, which we saw a lot of it get started in Summer Rising this past summer, but a lot of that has continued. And so new partnerships have been organized and we hope to be able to maintain those arts programs throughout the year and in the future years, because it is such an important part of our schools. We're also seeing further development of morning meeting and advisory programs. Our schools are working with, a few months ago, we had a couple of universal literacy coaches join our CEC meeting and talk about what they were doing to engage early readers in phonics-based reading programs. We're seeing a continued development there, and more of our schools really building out those phonics-based programs and holding them as sacred time in the schedule. And then also the special education recovery programs began in the month of November and have been supporting kids. And we are seeing a lot of schools and school leaders make the decision to reduce class size in order to not just adhere to health and safety guidelines, but in order to be able to create a healthier and more personalized learning environment, to be able to respond better to student academic needs in the classroom. And so there's some really positive things that are happening here. I've mentioned it in a couple of other meetings, but this year our city kicked off a citywide initiative to implement academic screeners in math and literacy, as well as a social emotional screener across our city. We are going to conduct a second round of math and literacy screeners beginning in the month of, beginning this week, running through the month of February. I wouldn't be surprised if that deadline extended a little bit to help our schools get back on track with when this Omicron variant subsides, to be able to give us a chance to really examine student learning. That second round of screeners is going to be important. And we are also looking to, in the month of February, getting back to in-person inquiry cycles. We've been doing collaborative learning across our principal groups, having host principals share the work that they are doing to help to safely return students to school and accelerate learning. And so we're looking to get back in person with some of those meetings in the month of February. So I'm going to share that, make sure that people are aware. We are definitely responding and spending a lot of time on health and safety, but we are also really responding to the continued academic need. We want to make sure that we're never losing sight of providing good learning opportunities for kids in the classroom. I will also share that at our last PEP meeting, PS 150 was approved to be recited, officially approved to be recited in Lower Manhattan on Trinity Place. If you can see my little map there, it's right north of the Battery Tunnel. It's going to be a beautiful school that has expanded capacity for kids in pre-K through 5th grade. This is going to be a non-zoned District 2 school. So if you live anywhere in District 2, you can apply to this school and be a part of that priority group. If the school does not fill with District 2 families that want to attend this school, then the process for enrollment goes to broader to the borough and then citywide. But this is a District 2 school that is open to anybody living anywhere in District 2, and it's I think it's be a really, really special place. It's the gray part that you see in this picture is the base of an office tower, and then the red brick building is a mansion that's stood in that location for hundreds of years, and both are being integrated as a part of the school. So I think it's going to be a pretty special place to visit. And this school also does have a set aside for students who receive free and reduced lunch as a part of the diversity and admissions. Okay, so you've heard my voice for long enough. I want to turn it over to our new Deputy Superintendent, Reggie Higgins, and just give him the chance to hold the floor a little bit and tell you a little bit about himself and his work ahead.
Reggie, can you unmute yourself?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Kelly, for that great announcement. And thank you so much for CEC2. I am so proud to join you as the next Deputy Superintendent for District 2. I know you see some of the accomplishments that I've obtained during my tenure with the Department of Education, but I think it's more important that I share a little bit about myself. One of my heroes is my grandfather. My grandfather served our country in World War II. And when he returned back to the United States of America, he returned to a country where he was still treated as a second-class citizen. And one of the things that he often said to me is that despite the challenges that we face as a nation, the United States of America is still the greatest country in the world, because here, if you work hard, you can become anything that you want to. He believed in education as being an access point where you could become your very best self. And he allowed me and my family to really grow as learners. He believed that education was the great equalizer for everyone. And I learned that early on, that if I could focus on improving myself, working hard, and using education to create a better experience for me, that I could pay it forward and create a similar opportunity for others. The most important work that I did when I was a principal was, yes, we improved outcomes and experiences for our students and families, but the most important success was that I gave kids and families something to believe in. And they had someone that was an advocate that taught them the importance of believing in yourself. And when you have someone that believes in you, you believe that you can do anything. I know that as a fact because Kelly has given me an opportunity to participate in some of the most incredible work with the most amazing leaders, children, teachers, families, and community leaders. And I'm so honored to say that, yes, I am so excited to join you all in this journey here in District 2. I know that the work, will not always be easy. I know that we're all living in a very difficult time, and we're all doing the best that we can to navigate very difficult waters. But I also understand that we all share one common denominator, and that's that we all want the best for all of our children, for all of our families. Despite what we might disagree about, let us always be focused on the one thing that we always can agree on, and that is that we will do the best work and we will do our best to ensure that all of District 2 students are successful. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that my Morehouse brother, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday that we celebrate on Monday. Dr. King said to take the first step with faith. You don't have to see the whole staircase. You just have to take the first step. And so I encourage you to take this first step with me as we build and form this new relationship together. Thank you all.
Thanks so much, Reggie. It's great to have you, and it's just been fantastic to have a thought partner in work just over these past couple of weeks. And I just want to thank Ben for allowing me to welcome another member of our district team, Yanette Bueno Gonzalez. So I'll turn it over to you, Yanette.
Hi, everyone. My name is Yanette Bueno. Prior to coming to District 2, I worked with CUNY as a math curriculum and instruction specialist. And before that, I was a math teacher for a very long time. My passion is definitely math, STEM, but also curriculum development, implementation, instruction. I will work endlessly to make sure District 2 students receive a curriculum that aligns with the standards that are at grade level, that are challenging, that they have the necessary rigor for students to succeed. I'm also very, very passionate about social justice and making sure that all students receive the education that they are entitled to. I am extremely excited to be here tonight to be part of District 2 team. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Yanette. Yeah, and so, for a long time, it's Jennifer and I have had this very, very small team, and we have done our very best to roll up our sleeves and get out there and support our schools, and it just feels like a little bit of a blessing here to be able to have these additional staff members to help us do good work and support our schools and support our teachers. So thanks so much, everybody, and with that. That concludes my presentation this evening.
Thank you, Superintendent Kelly McGuire. I'm looking forward to our D2 leader meetings and getting to know our new deputy superintendent. Reggie, I look forward to talking with you and Yanette as well. So do we have any questions for the superintendent? Yes, we have hands. Chen, you're first, then Ushma, and then Len and Lupe. Okay, Chen.
Well, again, welcome, Reggie and Yanette. Thank you, Superintendent McGuire, for the update. I have a few questions. One is, can you just clarify again for the students who do get, COVID, as compared to the adults who get COVID, how long do they stay out and test to come back in? What is the period of time? As I heard something a little bit different from what I understand. Like I was told, like the students need to come back after the 11th day, but you said something about the 8th day or 7th day. Can you just
Sure. Yeah.
Clarify?
Yeah. So students who are vaccinated can take a test, and they can take that test on the 5th day. And then return to school on the 8th day. Those are students who are vaccinated. If students are unvaccinated, then they have to remain out the entire 10 days and can return on the 11th day.
And for vaccinated, what do you consider vaccinated?
What we're considering vaccinated is 2 shots fully vaccinated. And 2 shots fully vaccinated, and I am more than happy, as I've mentioned to our principals, if there's anything that I'm missing with these, with the policy changes, we're often like going back to the books and the written policy in order to make sure that we're correct with different things. So I'm more than happy to have other team members or Dr. Neal to like be able to weigh in on some of these responses too, because I know that this is a lot of this stuff is changing as well.
Okay, so fully vaccinated, like double dose, and then so 5th day, right? Is that that's just
a test can be taken on the 5th day.
And if it's negative, then on the 6th day, the child can return.
On the 8th day,
Still the 8th day. Okay, okay. Do you foresee that changing to match the adults? Because the adults are at higher risk than children.
Well, adults who are fully vaccinated now, who are working in our schools, can return after 5 days. So they can return on the 6th day wearing a high quality mask. A KN95 are the masks that we're distributing in our offices.
Okay, thank you. And for the high school admissions, we don't have district priority, right? It's only borough priority. Is that correct?
Borough priority, that's right.
Okay. And last one is just curious about the school lunch supply chain. Do we have any issues with having enough supplies, enough food stock for the students, and and also for, let's say, portion size and additional, second helpings and so forth that the student wants? What is the policy? What's the situation now, and what is the policy if students are still hungry? And especially with the older kids, like 5th graders and 4th graders.
Sure. I mean, I will. There have been some hairy moments. There have been some times when those of us who are either working at the district level or principals who are working in schools, we really want, like the snow day was a great example. How are we gonna make sure to get people in to be able to serve, to be able to provide lunches for kids. And I have just been amazed at the response from the Office of School Food. Prior to the snow day, all of the cafeterias had packed up in their refrigerators the majority of the lunches that were going to be distributed the next day, anticipating that there were going to be cafeteria staff who were not going to be able to make it in. And so we have not yet seen any inability for our students to get a full, nutritious, diverse lunch. There are times when it is not hot. That is certainly one of the things that we fall back on, is that sometimes we fall back on it and have to provide a cold lunch to kids. But there has not been a problem yet with being able to provide lunch, a variety of different things to kids. And in most cases, kids really can eat as much as they want of it. Seconds are definitely a thing, and kids can take advantage of that.
Okay, thank you very much, Sabrina Kelly.
Thanks, Ben. Hi, Kelly. I sent you a couple of the questions that I'm transmitting. I was invited to speak yesterday at Community Board 2, and they asked a couple questions that I didn't know the answers to, so I just was hoping perhaps you could be explicit. Things also change over time, so I have two different questions that I promised them that I would give them feedback on. The first relates to what, if anything, are there any rules that would trigger a school to close?
There is not a clear rule or flow chart or practice that you could follow that would be completely objective, black and white, that would result in a school or classroom closure. What I did begin to talk about in the presentation was when it is that a school entered a new phase of investigation. And that would be, again, if there were K through 12 classrooms that experienced 10 cases or more of COVID-19, or a 3K or pre-K that had 5 cases. And so Basically what happens is that, that triggers kind of an all hands on deck review of what is going on in the classroom. There hasn't been anything mentioned in regard to when a classroom or school closure might occur. And, it is true that we are doing everything we possibly can to keep classrooms open and safe for kids. And so there isn't a formal policy for closure, but there is a practice that's in place for a deeper review. And again, just touching on a couple little things, making sure that mask availability is in place, doing our best to make sure that students are distanced in a classroom, ventilation is there. Those are the kinds of issues that we might review if a investigation was triggered.
Okay, thank you. The second question that I had, but before I ask it, the nomenclature right now of fully vaccinated is still the 2 shots, though there is a consideration about whether or not the 3rd shot would be then considered part of being fully vaccinated. Who knows whether or not there will be a 4th shot, et cetera. So it's an ongoing thing. So the second question relates to whether or not there has been central guidance about absence reporting. I forwarded you some correspondence that I got in the end of December where certain schools were marking all students that were absent as though it was a kind of blessed quarantine exposure absence, whereas other schools were marking those who were keeping their children home out of an quote unquote abundance of caution, just as absent, et cetera, and whether or not schools are getting that kind of guidance related to absence reporting, or if there is anything central that has been sent out, because it's been very uneven across D2 schools.
Yep, and it's complicated for sure. It's complicated because the number of cases that have risen is, so basically, just backing up a little bit, is that attendance is, students are able to be marked present and attended if obviously they're in the building, and that is a positive attendance, but they're also considered to be they are also considered to be in attendance if they are ordered to be remote, and I'll come back to that word ordered. If they are ordered to be remote and they complete work online. So, and the completion of work could be, showing up for a synchronous event or turning in an assignment. Those are behaviors that would trigger a positive attendance, in attendance activity. So the ordered part is a little bit complicated because prior to the explosion of Omicron, we were able to take each case and really diagnose it and then prescribe how it is that we are going to respond to that case. And so if a student reported a positive case in the classroom, this is again prior to this explosion of Omicron, if a student reported a positive case, they were then, as per the health screener, ordered, and per the policy, ordered to quarantine. And because they were ordered to quarantine, and I'm using ordered in a little bit of a, it's probably not the exact right word for it, but they had to quarantine as per the policy. Then there was no way for them to come into the building. And so they would be marked present and attended if they completed work. So all of these cases have become, it's been complicated to figure out whether or not cases of Omicron or during this explosion of Omicron is whether or not each of those families has been told to quarantine by the school. But our policy is basically that students can be counted present and attended, whether they are directly ordered to quarantine or whether they know that they are not able to pass the health screener. As long as they complete online tasks that are posted, then we can count them as present. If they don't complete online tasks, then we cannot count them as present. And you are 100% right that it has been complicated and hard to keep track of each of those, hard to keep track of both the policy and very hard for schools to be able to keep track of who it is who is in quarantine and who it is who's not. But basically it comes down to if students are completing tasks at home, turning them in, or showing up for an office hour, then they are to be counted as present. I will say there is on the issue of whether it's an excused absence or an unexcused absence, our schools should be marking students as excused as long as they are hearing contact from families. If families are saying that they are keeping their children home because they don't feel safe sending them into the building, while the system for which we work for does not have a remote option for kids. And so the only option is to send them into school. That is like the system and structure, but we are still marking students as excused absence as long as that's being, the family is communicating directly with the school.
Thank you, Kelly.
Sure.
Len, you're up. I just want to make one comment. We have a few members, a few attendees who have their hands raised. Only council members during calendar meetings at this juncture can directly question the superintendent. You're welcome to speak. Those with your hands raised during our second speaker session, and maybe then Kelly can follow up at with an email or set up a meeting at some other point. But right now, it's just council members.
And I did just drop my email into the chat again. If you'd like to send an email to me, either I can answer it or a member of our team can.
All right. Thank you, Len.
So, good evening. Thanks for coming tonight. I have a question for you. So last year, as you know, the Department of Education created sort of like an optional pass-fail option for grading, where students could opt, should they choose, to have a grade entered of pass-fail. I was wondering if you're aware of any plans to do that again at the end of this year.
I haven't heard anything about that. I did also just want to make sure that people are aware that the attendance issues can get really, really complicated, but if students do have an excused absence, that is still recorded as an absence. So if it's, you're either present or you're absent. And so even if it is excused, we prefer absences to be excused, but or we prefer to hear about from families when someone is absent, but it is still recorded as an absence. Sorry, Len, I apologize. Oh, that's it?
Lupe, you're up.
Thank you. A couple things. Some of the schools that I've spoken to and the principals as well as their SLTs have been concerned as the policy change was, we were looking to increase in the testing, at least that's what was stated. And in 3 schools that I've spoken to in District 2, they had a massive cut in testing being done. Today specifically, only 8 students in a school with over 466 students. And although kindergarten is not included in that testing, if the 20% does include the vaccinated and unvaccinated population, both principal and SLT of the school was kind of very concerned why only 8 students were tested today. So my question and what they wanted me to inquire is, can you be more specific of what the 20%, SLT was trying to figure out on their own. They were trying to think, is this 20% of only unvaccinated, but vaccinated are included? Is this 20% including the entire school population that is eligible, meaning 1st to 5th grade, regardless of vaccination status, regardless if they have COVID, because I do realize they're not going to be testing students that have been positive for COVID in the, within that 90-day grace period. What is the 20% population? Where are we getting that 20% population from? Because if 20% of the school, the principal told me she would have expected at least 80 students to be tested today and only 8. And we were like, was this a mistake? Was this, we're just trying to get clarification, administration, as well as parents and families. And then I have a follow-up to that, but I'll let you.
Sure. Yeah. So I will say, just start off and say that, we are distributing hundreds of tests, our custodial that are taken at home. Our custodial engineers are consistently telling me that if you go to the MLK campus, that there are skyscrapers of tests that are still available for distribution to school, but those are at-home tests. And I know that there's a difference should be noted between at-home and the PCR tests, but we do have them. So for in-school PCR testing, what is happening is that the 20% is 20% of the number is arrived at by identifying the 20% of unvaccinated students who are in the building. However, the group of students that are tested include both vaccinated and unvaccinated students. And so listen, I mean, is more testing, people, the central office has distributed these at-home tests to all of us, two a week, because there is a strong belief that the more testing, the better. And so I think that everybody wishes that, we could test everybody every single day. But silver lining to that is that the number of students who are not vaccinated is shrinking. And so this is what the policy and practice is now. It is not to say that it won't change. But this is how it is that we're arriving at those numbers. And while it might not be as many people who are being tested by the health professionals who are coming into our buildings to conduct that testing, there are a large number of these at-home tests that are being distributed, and there's lots of access to that. So that's an option.
Just to follow up with, as far as, so the 20%, I want to be clear, it's not including the at-home test that they're sending home though, right? I didn't think so. And I know that our, one of the schools, PS234, I think they distribute over 1,000 already in just 1 week. But with only, and we have a lot of cases, our attendance was down to 71% all of last week due to positive cases. The data hub, as not accurate as it is, we had over 80 cases just in the past 3 weeks. And with only 8 students being tested in school with PCR, it's just very alarming. It's causing a lot of anxiety. And we're lucky enough to have a weekly testing van available to our community, both PS 150 as well as 234 for the next 5 weeks. But even with that being said, last question regarding adults' positivity and their quarantine time. I just want to be clear, the 5 days are for staff members that have tested positive but do not present any symptoms, meaning they're asymptomatic, correct? I just want to be clear on that because I feel like that is a huge portion of the 5-day quarantine rule that's not being really said. meaning if a teacher or staff is actually sick, they should not return on the 6th day, and maybe that part should kind of be echoed a little bit more. And if you can clarify, unless I could be wrong. So I just
you're,
want to be
you're
sure.
absolutely right, Lupe. There is when adults who had been diagnosed with a positive case of COVID-19 return from quarantine, there is a list of symptoms that they should not have before entering back into the building. But certainly, we just had this with one of our BCO members who was absent for 10 days because she was continuing to show symptoms. The virus is impacting different people in different ways. And so people should not return if they are still feeling sick, even if the 5 days have passed, and even if they have access to a high quality mask. So.
Right. And then to follow up with that, because there was some confusion as well as at our SLT meeting that needed better clarification for close contacts in your home. So and we had several cases like this where mom or dad has COVID and maybe the younger sibling that's not eligible for vaccination is not able to return to school until the father or mother, the first person, has stopped exhibiting symptoms. And then that's when the child's isolation period begins. And it is a full 10 days, being that that child is not vaccinated. Both of these points, I think, are not being explained, or a lot of families were very confused. And so I asked to be, just to get that clarification or to get that word out, because I think parents are thinking that because the policy did have a shortened quarantine with many scenarios, that in certain scenarios it would not really apply. And so that they should still, refrain from returning to school for possible exposure.
Yeah. We're seeing some schools that are sharing some of these flow charts with their communities about how to respond. And I think that it's been really great to see different people, after having approved them with Department of Health folks, to be able to provide tools that do clarify things, because it's really complicated.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Kush, you're up.
Hi, Kelly. A couple of quick things. One, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this since we already have, but on the COVID thing, I did want to make one correction to you. You said vaccinated is 2 shots. I believe it's 2 shots and then 2 weeks. And I only think I know that because a parent that I was in contact with experienced that. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. Bashma, would you agree with that?
Yes, you're totally correct, Kush.
And testing's return, when you say 5 days and then they're allowed back on the 8th, does a home test count? And I'm guessing not.
There was just a change made to that, and it's tough to get into the nuance of this. So if you are a pre-K child, pre-K or 3K child, then that child needs a PCR test in order to be able to return on the 8th day. If you are in kindergarten through 12th grade, you can do it with an at-home test.
And do they need to take a picture, or they're just depend on what you check off on the box?
There's a lot is riding on that health screener.
Okay. Next, I want, again, we talked about a lot about this. I just want to clarify for parents who are in the throes of this, because I don't think it doesn't wait for COVID on this. You mentioned that applications for kindergarten are open. Those close when? Refresh my memory.
They currently close January 18th. Although I was reminded today that it has been many, many years running that the central office has extended that deadline. So it has not been extended yet. It is still currently January 18th, but it is historically the central office has extended that deadline.
Okay. January 18th, that's Tuesday, a week from today, correct? Middle schools, the deadline, middle schools just opened yesterday. And you said the deadline was March 1st, correct?
That's right, yep.
Okay. I think that's.
Can I clarify one thing about it opening? I do not believe it's open. I do not believe you can actually submit an application now. I was told that it was going to be open the week of, if you go on the website, I just checked it there. It says the week of January 10th, and that the person in charge of it in the Office of Student Enrollment also said it would be midweek. So Wednesday or Thursday, you may be able to get into that, but you can't actually submit it.
I would agree with that. That's the experience that we're hearing from parents, including our own Robin Kelleher, who's I think going to speak next, and has a middle schooler. But the deadline for that is March 1st. Was that a change? I thought it was February something at one point.
Jennifer, do you want to field that?
I don't, honestly, I don't remember.
I pulled it
It
from.
might have been, it's March 1st now. And that too, that deadline, you know, historically, as Kelly said, deadlines have been extended for usually about a week, and it would happen sometime close to the application close period.
I would agree with both of those. I think I've seen it 1 week and 2 weeks on separate occasions. And then lastly, high school. I know we're not, our PC doesn't cover that, but I'm sure we have a lot of parents who will be applying with 8th graders. I believe that opens on the 24th of January, and I don't remember the end date.
I think it's also March 1st.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry to be pedantic on that, but I get lots of people asking, and yes, I did want to point out the fact that it could be. Thank you for pointing out that it could be extended, but are not this time, and the fact that there is a problem with middle school admissions at this time.
Well, the information is posted on the DOE website, the timeline as well, and it's all very clear.
Thank you. Just thought I'd highlight again for parents who are listening. Thank you, Kelly.
Sure. Thanks, Jennifer.
Robin Broshi, your hand is raised next.
Yeah, thanks. I put it in the chat. I just wanted to clarify the high schools that were formerly District 2 high schools. So Baruch, Elro, Lab, Museum, School of the Future, Millennium wasn't District 2, but it was downtown. All of these schools are citywide. They're not borough-wide. It sounded like earlier there was some confusion about that. So just to be clear, there are no, as far as I'm aware, but certainly for the District 2 priority, the schools that used to be District 2 priority, those are still all open to students throughout the city, not just Manhattan.
Thanks, Robin. Yes, I think that I don't remember how I worded it actually, but thanks very much for that. That clarification is right. Jennifer, I saw you nodding. Is there anything you wanted to add to that too, or?
No, just that's accurate.
Okay, Robin Kelleher, you're up.
Hi, I'll make this very quick so we can move on. But Kelly, I wanted to ask you quickly about gifted and talented. There's been no mention, and I know at one of my schools, PS33, we shared gen ed and G&T school, and it's very stressful for the principal not to know what is happening and what to expect. When will we know, when we'll hear more information? B, when will the principals be hearing any information? Because as far as I know, they know nothing, and they, it's a similar pattern to the past where they're kind of left out to find out last or sometimes after us. And C, my question is, does the new administration, to your knowledge, have they had any input or possibly considered any changes to what the last administration was planning to do with gifted and talented? And if so, do you know what that is?
I honestly have no idea. I haven't been updated on any new policies or practices that are going to in effect. I don't know when the next communication regarding gifted and talented is going to be shared with the rest of both school staff and parents. I'm in the same spot as you, Robin. We're just waiting to hear about it. And I know it's really stressful for our principals for sure. And certainly for parents as well.
I'm really feeling for the principals right now. I know they're struggling with Omicron, with walkouts, with the lack of knowledge about what's going to happen, with parents complaining about, from both sides. They're getting it from every angle, and I think some of them are at their wits' end. So I'm wondering what we can do to help support principals, and if there's anything we can pass along to the higher ups in terms of the need to really support our schools and our principals during this hard time, because it's really rough on them.
Yeah, and I do just wanted to say and reiterate, we thankfully have, I walked into a small but really incredible district team that's willing to support and be there at any hour for our teachers or school leaders. And I'm really thankful to that. I feel like we've avoided a lot of the additional stressors that have happened in some of this other schools and other boroughs and other districts. And I think that part of that is that, our team members are willing to pick up the phone at any hour of the night and answer a question to be able to help schools out, or to be able to talk to a parent if they have a question at any time. So we've been really fortunate in that way, and fortunate to from the supportive community that you all have been. We're going to get through this, and hopefully, it's funny, I was looking back at notes from these various meetings throughout the year, and it just feels like we're in this different time zone each month, and a different
Really
world
does.
each month. Yeah. And so who knows what February will bring, but hopefully it'll be good things. I'm sure it will.
Well, thank you for your support and for your guidance, Kelly.
All right, I think all the council members who had questions have had an opportunity to question you, Superintendent Kelly, but I do have 2 points. Everything else I think was covered here, and I have 2 points that I wanted to ask. From your presentation, you stated you'll be doing screeners in February. Will you be able to summarize the difference between, I think there were October screeners or in the fall versus the February screeners, how we're doing as a district? Will you be able to make a presentation like, I don't know, February, March, April?
I think that we'll be able to include those data in March. I'm not sure what the date is for our March meeting yet, but a lot of that depends a little bit on whether or not the deadline is extended. But that certainly is something that I would share.
Okay. I think it's March 8th. We'll be discussing it in the business meeting. It could be a very special meeting. And the other topic that I wanted to discuss is enrollment numbers. Anything new there? Or do you have any idea now?
I asked right before, well, not just right before, but in the weeks and days prior to this meeting, and we do not have official audited register numbers yet. But there's one other thing that I did want to just share really quickly, and just going back to attendance, and I apologize, Ben, I can save it if you have another question that you wanted to ask. I just want to make sure that people are aware that we know that being in school, attending school is really, really important, but families should not send their children to school if they are sick. It is causing a bigger problem that will extend for a longer period of time. The We don't know what the policy will be for admissions for fall of the next year. We know that attendance was removed from the enrollment policy for next fall because last year was so uncertain. I just want to make sure that people know that you should not send your children to school sick. And if a principal shares that a child does need to stay home because they were showing symptoms or they had reported a positive case, please just follow the guidelines that are posted or that you're guided through via the health screener. I think that when we don't follow some of those protocols, that's when we get into trouble, and it makes everybody really nervous and anxious. Omicron is unpredictable enough on its own. And so being able to follow some of these procedures, even if they're not always 100% perfect, gives us some confidence and some reliability in the work that we're doing. So thank you again, everybody. I really appreciate it. And yeah, with that, I'll stop.
Thank you very much, Superintendent, and thank you for introducing us to Deputy Superintendent Reginald Higgins and Yanette Gonzalez as well. So welcome aboard to our district. Glad to meet you. So our next item is the discussion of report of committees. Report of committees. Ushma, do you want to discuss your committee meeting tomorrow?
Sure. Everyone is invited. Please, I know that this is a meeting. This is a week full of meetings. We will have probably just gotten off a call, but at 7:30 tomorrow night, we will have the first meeting of 2022 for the Students in Temporary Housing Committee. And it'll be fairly short, as many of them are, maybe about an hour. But we have a special guest coming in addition to Iris Gersten, who will be able to give us a bit of an update on the number of shelters that remain open in D2 and our students in temporary housing. But one of our schools in D2, the only one that has a Bridge the Gap social worker, PS 58, she will be joining us tomorrow night, Abby Hughes, so that we can pick her brain about the issues that she faces, anything that we as the CEC and a community can do to help, other than in the material way that we have been. And we'll hopefully be able to get an update from all of the terrific work that many of you are doing with your liaison schools or the schools where your children attend. And again, just really wanted to congratulate all of the members who we've been working with over the past couple of weeks and setting up lists so that we can circulate those to the community and really help the students in temporary housing in our district. So please join us tomorrow night at 7:30. If you can't, we will record the meeting and put it on the CEC YouTube channel.
Great, thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to report on what their committee is doing? All right. Then I'll just mention real briefly that tomorrow the School Construction Authority will be presenting Joshua Adams from the School Construction Authority will be presenting about the capital plan December amendment. And I will post a link which you just received just a few hours ago. I'll post it on our website. So, and I'll email it to the council members as well. So you can review the amendments to the 5-year plan. And that would be useful to, if you can attend, to watch the meeting when you make your decisions on rankings of capital requests. All right, tomorrow at 5 p.m. Depending upon questions, we're slated to go from 5 p.m. to 6:30. We will not go past 7:30, so the Students in Temporary Housing Committee will be on time. The start. All right, thank you. Unless someone else has a committee report, I would. The next item is discussion of resolutions. Does anyone have questions for the sponsors of 186A? Kush, yes.
Yeah, two questions, Ushma. I don't know that it impacts my decision how to vote, but out of curiosity, I think in your resolution you mentioned that there were 207 cases. I forget the exact wording, but I'm trying to pull it up. 207 reports of educational neglect. Out of curiosity, how many of those are in our district specific? I probably don't know exactly, but have you heard a lot of them being in our district in particular?
We don't know what the breakdown is, so I can't be specific about that.
And then your resolution also mentions that Gary Lennon brought this up in PEP. Would you be able to summarize what he had to say on the matter, or why it came up in PEP? Because yeah, I only know them to bring up contracts and stuff that's specific for voting.
I'm going to have to defer to Robin or Lupe on that one.
What was the question, Kush?
It was brought up at PEP because there were a lot of families that were still pending for medical exemption, yet they were still being, cases were still opening up. Some, in fact, in one family in particular, had already made accommodations with their school where they were doing work on the Google Classroom, not physically in the classroom, but not being marked present, and therefore got a case open up regarding educational neglect.
Got it.
Ushma, I think you actually meant PS 51, just to clarify. Not PS.
You're right. You're right. Thank you, Robin. I misspoke there. PS 51.
I'm sorry, PS 51 in relation to what?
The Bridge the Gap social worker is from PS 51, not PS 58. That was my mistake when I was giving my committee report. Thank you for correcting that. So yes, I wasn't present and I didn't listen to that particular November PEP meeting. So thank you, Lupe, for explaining that one.
That's it for me. Thanks.
Unless someone else has a question, I have 2 or 3 questions here. The audit, you're looking for one of the points that you resolve in the resolution is making a 5-year audit available. Why did you choose to do a 5-year audit? Or put that in the resolution, because that could be onerous in terms of like getting all the data and the information.
Sure. My personal view on this, although I welcome Lupe and Robin to weigh in on this, is to a certain extent, it's also to see whether or not this problem existed pre-pandemic and whether or not this is something that has significantly changed over the course of the last 2 years. My personal view is also that there's no way that they're actually going to do it. So we figured we might as well ask and assume that there's not actually going to be a response.
I will second what Ushma said. I mean, we would get within the 3 years of pandemic and 2 years prior would kind of give us something to compare and contrast. But I too agree with Ushma. I mean, we've asked for many things, even through FOIL, and have not received them. So I'm not going to hold my breath, but we did think it was important to at least put it in there.
Have you foiled foiled information regarding this?
We figured this was the first step towards that.
Okay. Can you explain in what you resolve in terms of the committee that you would like to see created? Is that something within CECD2 or how do you foresee that? Because I'm a little unclear in terms of to examine.
The very last one.
Yes.
Right. So that actually was something that we had indicated last time around, and that Robin Kelleher helped us to change the wording in there to make sure that it was mostly clear that this is not just a CEC committee. This is DOE, this is community stakeholders, this is parents who have been affected, this is concerned parents within the community, as well as DOE staff, administrators, officials towards making sure that these issues either A, don't arise, and B, then are dealt with promptly such that there is not any punitive action towards families.
I understand that, but these stakeholders, who determines that in terms of the committee? I mean, what?
I think it would probably be partnership between, if we were able to get some legislators, whether they be local or state officials, to agree that this is worthwhile to do, that then we could work together with them, with Kelly, with anybody else that Kelly might recommend that we could reach out to towards actually making this happen.
And I understand that you're not aware of what the numbers are in D2, and there are 207 reported, but have you talked with any of the parents that have faced these issues, and what are they saying? Because I have not received any email from any parent on this issue. And so I'm not saying it's not happening, but I'm just, I haven't received anything regarding this, or it hasn't been sent to info@CECD2.net. And again, I'm not saying it's not happening. It's just, it's not, hasn't been an issue that people have decided to share with us in CEC. Not, maybe they have with you three, but
I've only heard anecdotal reports. There's nothing that has been shared with me directly, although I do know Robin Kelleher was saying something about a family that she knew, and I see Lupe nodding her head. So I will stay silent on this one if others want to speak.
Yeah,
I know personally families that have reached out to me, hence it was what prompted this resolution in the first place, and they are District 2 families.
Robin, you had your hand up before.
I was just going to suggest that maybe the families that are directly impacted by this don't know that, or don't have the bandwidth to contact you.
Okay. All right. Kush, you have your hand raised?
Only if you're done.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, there's one other question I had. So obviously, yeah, most of the way it's phrased now is not objectionable to me. I did have one concern that was raised by a few other people. ACS, I know there's been more intervention, broadly speaking, according to your resolution and anecdotally from what I've heard, during COVID times, and perhaps unnecessarily so. But I've also heard of many cases where they've also found cases of abuse, whether it's domestic, child, spousal, that was easier to hide during COVID because kids go to school less, for example. So to me, there is potentially a balance there. Has there been any?
Why would that just be students in temporary housing, though?
I didn't say it was.
But that's what the resolution is about. So.
But the cases that are reported are not. They're just cases, correct?
I guess I don't understand why a resolution that's targeted at students in temporary housing would ask you to raise broader questions about.
I'm not asking you to raise broader questions. I'm just saying the resolution, while it's maybe intended for students in temporary housing, is not limited to them. It's just limited to all ACS cases, period. Correct? There's no way to say I only care about students in temporary housing families. It's all families, correct? And when ACS has gone out, they have found issues of abuse, which might not have been found otherwise, or otherwise are found more often when kids do go to school, and which is not the case when they've been home during remote.
I'll answer that. Kush, you are correct that this, while in theory is largely pointed at students in temporary housing, we were very careful with the language not to carve it out specifically for them. So yes, this is a more global resolution around all families and educational neglect and absence reporting being used to target any and all families in that regard. So on that point, I think we are clear, this is all families. though it is my intention for personally, I can't speak for Robin or Lupe here, but the anecdotal reports that we heard from families were not those who were students and the families of those living in temporary housing. Now, is it possible that neglect is happening in some of these families where there is an increased amount of absence? Yes. However, the anecdotal reports that led us to write this, the experiences that we heard from D2 families, whether it be, I'll even say it was at PS 41 that this was happening to families, at least one that I knew of. We are very hopeful that given all of the changes related to absence reporting that are happening as a result of a pandemic are not being used and weaponized against these families. The data that we have based on the things that are in this resolution is that this is increasingly happening to those students who are in temporary housing.
As well as students with disabilities that are not able to get on a bus for uncontrollable, things that are out of their control.
Daniela?
I have two questions. One is, now I'm a little confused given Kish's question. So the resolution, as I understood, was also for every single ACS case. It was not target for students in temporary housing. Isn't that right? If we pass this resolution, this is a recommendation of a policy for all cases.
That is correct, Daniela, that ACS should not be called on families for excess absences during a pandemic.
Okay. And so, I think every policy has unintended consequences, right? And we always need to do kind of a cost benefit analysis. And it's hard for me to understand why pushing for this when we have only anecdotes and we don't even have any indication that this is actual problem in our district. And when there is actual data about, increase in abuse of children because nobody's checking on them, right? And so I'm just trying to understand like what is prompting so much urgency around this problem, but not concerns about also children who nobody's checking could be actually being harmed. And so there is data on, I don't have official data, but I talked to two people this week, and I'm happy to try to get, because I talked to somebody who work in this area just to try to understand if they have seen an increase. It's hard to get data now exactly because of that, like they are not really being able to check. And the other thing is that anecdotal as well. I talked to somebody at DOE who said that, and actually DOE school staff is being very, very flexible with the coding and really giving leeways to families who are keeping their children away from school out of an abundance of caution. And exactly actually the opposite of what is being, the claims that you are making, that actually compared to before the pandemic, school staff was a lot more rigid in terms of coding this and then referring. But now really like only extreme cases, because there are so many families who are, sometimes concerned and keep their kids for a week or something. But if somebody, I think my concern is if there is a family who is really just keeping their kids out of school for months at a time, I don't see why there cannot be a check on them. And then, if there's a problem with the process, let's discuss. Of course, not should be to the most extreme actions, but I think it would be reasonable for, us to check on a child who has not been in school for months, because again, I think that if we don't do that, there are going to be some cases of extreme abuse that are happening. And I am more concerned about nobody checking on kids who are like completely out of contact than, some family getting a call and then just going through the process, especially given that, again, the DOE is saying that they're being extremely flexible with this coding and the policy right now.
So Daniela, I appreciate your comments. If you carefully read the resolution that we have, it is not about people who have kept their children home for months and months and months. This is about those who are being coded for being absent when they have a medical reason or they have COVID, etc. Okay, the anecdotes that we are discussing here, there are references to the increased number of ACS cases. Yes, there are anecdotes for people that I know, that Lupe knows, that Robin Kelleher knows, etc. So our anecdotes hold just as much weight here, okay? So this is an issue that is happening to students. It is happening, increasing right now. We were very, very specific in the language when we took the trouble to make sure that Len and Robin Kelleher also read this, and they agreed with the language that we used here. We are not trying to give anyone an opportunity here to go remote because they feel like it. This is about people who are not able to come to school and have reasons for it, and we do not want ACS after them. I kept one of my children home after both of my other children were exposed in school. Okay, so I chose to keep one of my kids home. If I get reported to ACS for that, that's going to be a traumatizing event for me, for my family, for my children, scarring, and it is not something that is easily undone. This is what we are talking about for these families who have to go through these processes when it is unfair and unmerited and unwarranted.
So just a follow-up question. So what you're saying is that I kept my kids here for 2 days. You know, they didn't have any symptoms for 11 days. I even told Kelly, but they were still testing negative, testing positive. So, but what you're saying is that so people are getting calls from SCS because they're keeping their kids for 3 days at home? 3 days?
And it's not a call. Can I clarify, Daniela?
Yes, they're being referred.
This is not a check. This is not a referral. This is a case that is, it's an investigation that's opening up for the next 60 days. It's a very traumatic experience. And these are not just anecdotal references. I'm talking about real families that have expressed these experiences with me. In our district, I don't need to name the schools, but that some of these families are actually on this call listening. And it is a very traumatic experience, one that is not necessary, especially when there are, these families have things in place within the school. I think Kelly and maybe Kush, they laid it out perfectly in the superintendent report, meaning some schools are handling these absences very differently. Some principals are being a lot more lenient, and maybe in these past 3 weeks since the Omicron surge. But we're talking about families that have been dealing with this from the beginning of the school year, and they are doing everything in their best, within their control to make an education worthwhile for their children in a safe environment for their families. And if their medical referral exemption hasn't been approved, or they're not able to get to school via transportation, or housing has been closed on them in our district, and they're being moved as far as students in temporary housing out of our district and still trying to commute, these cases are traumatic towards the family and unnecessary if they were just trained to be coded accurately. And that's all. I think the bulk of this resolution speaks in that regard.
Chen, you're up.
Thank you. My reading of the resolution, it looks like we just want to get more information. We want to engage the parties who are involved with this and or affected. Because one of the things I'd like to ask is, can we talk to someone from ACS and get an understanding about their process? What's the thresholds where they would, quote unquote, prosecute a case, so to speak? What's the sensitivity? I hear from Superintendent McGuire that the schools are now very forgiving in terms of marking absences due to concern about COVID, and their excused absences, even if the families feel that it's just a concern to just keep the student home for whatever period of time, and it's even though it's still an absence, but it's an excused absence, though there should be no, and there's contacts made with the school so they're fully understanding of that. The question I have about the resolution as written, and I'm not going to quibble over it particularly, but ACS seems to be a different department managed differently, separately from the DOE, but you have a DOE, you say you ask the DOE to give clear cut, I think it was be resolved to make all data surrounding ACS cases neglect available immediately to the PEP. So is it that the cases that they bring to ACS or what ACS records, like who should provide that data? Shouldn't it be both, or ACS, they hold the cases, don't they? That's referred to them. Shouldn't they be the ones to report to PEP, not DOE? Because once they report it, it's kind of out of their hands. It's in the hands of ACS. That's just a technical question, but I personally don't see any reason to oppose it. It's just getting more information and some visibility. I don't see any kind of anti-ACS sentiment in there, but that's just this is my kind of questions. That's all. If you can clarify that point, that's all. So maybe minor point.
Appreciate your questions about syntax here. To a certain extent, I'm going to repeat something that I remember Tom Rockledge saying many times during the last set of CEC meetings. These resolutions do very little. What we're trying to do here is signal to electeds or anyone that will listen that this absence reporting and using it as a weapon against certain families is unacceptable. If I'm quite honest, we would love to get the information. We would love to get the data. We would love for especially the very first, therefore be it resolved around clear-cut language about absence reporting. And I do think that that was part of what Kelly was talking about in his report is probably the most critical here towards making sure that, we are not contributing and the schools are not contributing to families being brought up on cases of educational neglect. I appreciate your comments about syntax. They are well taken. If you would like to propose some changes or amendments, I think we can be open-minded, but I think at this point, what
I'm not going to quibble about that. I just was trying to clarify and make the point about ACS being an independent body from DOE, just to as a.
Sure. I don't think I had any anticipation DOE would give us the information either, but we can ask.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any other council members that have questions regarding this resolution? I would have just liked to have seen in the therefore section, besides the data request, the meat of what you're asking here is for what you state in your title here, a more collegial partnership between the New York City Department of Education and Administration for Children's Services. I think that's important. I think the tone of that is useful and should have been included in the therefore section, or I would like to see that. And also I would like to see that to clarify that this is not just about data. This is about the appropriateness of investigating someone who's just holding back a child from attending because of COVID issues. So, I think that would have.
I appreciate the sentiment, Ben, but you've had this resolution for over a month now. I really wish you could have told us that, a few days ago. We brought it up for discussion last month.
But that's why it's a working draft. Yeah, it's a draft, and that's why we discussed these things.
Yeah, but why would you raise that at the meeting right before we're going to vote? Why couldn't you have emailed us 2 weeks ago?
You had 5 members. Well, it's true.
No, but just when that's the virtue of circulating these drafts among the entire council earlier and not waiting to the last minute like we often do. Everyone is allowed to give input, to give friendly suggestions for how to make it a clearer document.
But that's why we also have these open meetings to discuss this.
Agreed, but that could be like the kind of friendly feedback you're giving. That's not.
I did not think about this.
That's stuff that you can share absolutely in advance to make it more compelling.
All right.
I make a motion to take a vote on it.
Oh no, that wouldn't.
One last question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Danielle has her hand raised.
Yeah.
Sorry. The only thing that as I was thinking, as Ben was saying, the only thing here that it bothers me is that when you have in the whereas in November 2021, Chalk Peak reported families receiving visits, that the number 3 says students waiting for home instruction approval. Wouldn't that be families that, out of an abundance of caution, might think that they want to have remote and they have applied for that request? And then I don't know if we have any data about how much time is taking DOE to, because the other ones, I think I agree with you, Ushma, they are pretty clear case, like, you know, if you have transportation issues, which like who hasn't had transportation issues, right, this year, or if you have, you know, somebody who is immunocompromised in your family. But if you're just requested home instruction approval, and I'm assuming, right, that people have requested for all different types of reasons. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if we have data on that. Would that classify some families? I'm just trying to understand if that would classify, as Ben said.
I think those are questions perhaps best answered by Kelly, but I can't answer that. I don't know.
Can I ask Daniela, just to clarify, I was a bit confused by your question. Were you asking if the pending approvals for home instruction, do you think that's just like a remote option, or do you realize that is for the medically fragile exemption?
Well, they need to go through a process to be confirmed that the child has a medical need, right? But
right,
until we have that process approved, we don't know.
No, there is a process,
that's
and those are the people that are pending that have not.
I know that there's a
received
process.
approval.
Again, I think my bias here is I am way more concerned about children who nobody's checking and could be really in harm's way. Like, it's traumatic for families to be referred to ACS. It's way more traumatic for a child who's actually undergoing abuse and nobody's checking them. And I know these are very small, extreme cases, but in a way, we need to create the policies that protect the most vulnerable children, right? And that's why we have, you know, teachers have the policy, they need to report all of that. And so I think my bias looking at this is if there is any kind of an unintended consequence that would create less checks on children who might be going through abuse, and you know, given all with COVID, all the layers that we have to check on these kids and report these cases are you know, are failing more, right? We don't have as many checks as we could have. And so that's the only thing that, as I was looking those cases, that's the only one that it kind of raised a red flag for me. And I wanted to ask a question, but again, it's okay if we don't have data on that and we don't know how much time it's taking.
I will let you know a big motivation in writing this resolution on behalf of families. I think a big consensus with a lot of the families that are dealing with such a traumatic experience was the fact that there are families that actually are in dire need of these type of inquiries that unfortunately are being wasted on families that are not in need of these inquiries. Do you see what I'm saying? Where I agree with you, but I think that what's happening right now is actually hindering families that might be in need of this more so. And like I said, I think Ushma said it best, we don't want to weaponize something that kind of targets family of color, especially, more often than not. And these are unnecessary. There are children that are being failed by this system every single day. And I think that if we allow the system to work in the regard, at least to benefit the kids that actually need it, instead of investigating families that are actually doing what's best for their family, it would help. I think it would help in that sense. So
I just want, like, I've heard so many members of this council talk about, like, well, we don't trust the DOE to do X and we don't trust the city agency to do Y. And that's fine. I think it's fair to have that kind of skepticism. But what I'm hearing tonight is now these same agencies are trusted to make the right decisions. And so I think we should think about why in this conversation we're deferring to city agencies when in other conversations we're very skeptical of the power those institutions have. Why in some situations we're saying we should assume parents aren't making the best choices for their kids, or that there's some critical mass of parents not making the best choices for their kids that warrants all parents in a certain category to be investigated, where in other situations we get frustrated when the DOE doesn't defer to parents to make the best choices for their children. And why is there this distinction? And, you know, there are extreme cases of families that are gonna, that may not be sending their kids to school right now, that are engaged in educational neglect. But my question is, why is that? Do we think there are parents that are intentionally leveraging COVID to educationally neglect their children? Because that seems to be the kind of subtext I'm hearing. And there's all kinds of ways that unfortunately families aren't acting in their children's best interests, but it's always the extreme case, whether we're talking about very affluent families or families that are struggling. And I think our baseline assumption in all scenarios should be that parents are acting in their child's best intentions, and singling out sort of families that have applied for medical exemptions and are just terrified to send their kids to school, or you know, to be under this increased scrutiny compared to me who, you know, we were visiting elderly relatives over break and I made an executive decision to keep my kids home, not because I was even worried about them getting COVID, because I was worried about their grandparents getting COVID. I had the privilege to do that without any like worry that I was going to be reported, but just not everyone has that level of comfort, and not every and justified for the same reasons that a lot of us have expressed distrust of DOE and certain actors in the past. It's the same thing where, you know, they're not always going to be acting in ways that we feel that should have faith. So I really think like this is another example of trusting families first.
Thank you, Robin Broshi. Kush, you have your hand raised. You are muted.
Never mind. I withdraw my comment.
Okay. All right. So the Chen, you wanted to make a motion, just to let you know that
Can't do that.
it is in our agenda
Yes.
to vote on this after the second speaker session.
I think that we should wait till after second speaker session because there are people.
We have to wait.
You can't wait now. You have to wait, and you have to follow the agenda.
Okay, I'm just agreeing.
I withdraw my motion.
Thank you.
All right.
And that's after the second public
correct
session.
Apologize for my ignorance of the agenda.
All right. Ushma and Janie, you had a discussion of draft of letter writing rules. All right, that's the next item.
Yes. Janie, want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. So during the last CEC meeting, Ushma and I mentioned that we would collaborate on putting together agreed upon procedures with regards to when letters are presented. And in the public document, I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but in each section, I'll kind of give you the high level. And Ushma, please chime in if I missed anything or you want to add comments. You know, I think what we tried to do is provide agreed upon procedures that addresses all the discussions that council usually has about what we should do, like what, you know, if then, if what. So we said, let's take a step back and try to figure out and put a document together that would answer as many questions as possible. So there's a prescriptive, so we don't always have this dialogue of, you know, it should be this, it should be that. So I think the first thing is we talked a little bit about what are the scope of the letters. So I think the letters should be primarily used for one of two purposes: to report an opinion, make a request, issue a recommendation, particularly if something is urgent or time sensitive. It shouldn't be something where it replaces a traditional resolution process. So if you're using a letter to write a resolution, you shouldn't do that. The letter is really meant to be a letter to address the things that I just mentioned. The next thing, I don't know, Gushma, did I miss anything in terms of our, the scope of how we think letters should be used? Okay, awesome.
And it's in particular what Janie said, it's something that is of an extremely time-sensitive nature. Or the other kind of resolution is, letter is a welcome or an invitation to dialogue.
Okay, the next section is the drafting letters. So what we try to do is strike a balance between getting enough support amongst council members, but not triggering open meeting laws. So what we thought is any council member can propose a letter and discuss it with up to 2 council members. So the idea is the letter will be circulated to the entire committee, but you have some sense of buy-in from some members, not all the members, because otherwise we didn't want to broach, kind of the open meeting laws. And we also didn't want to do too many because, I think part of it is we don't want the members who weren't asked to say, hey, well, you spoke to everybody except for 3 people. So we said 3 kind of feels like the right number. So once a letter's been drafted with 3 council members, it gets sent to the entire committee. Let's see, what did I say? So the letters are circulated as draft. Okay. Then the next thing is we try to focus on the standard of procedures for discussion and approval of letters. And there's kind of 2 steps that we take. One section deals with if it's presented at a calendar meeting versus if a letter will be discussed in an expedited fashion. Let's say we're in between meetings. So we tried to figure out, okay, how can we address both scenarios, particularly if an urgent letter or if an urgent request for a letter has come up. I know, Ushma, do you want to walk us through some of those details?
Sure, Janie. I think you did a good job teeing that up. There are going to be times, the example that we had was the student transportation letter. That was before or in between 2 different meetings. So that was what would trigger this expedited process. But by and large, we want letters to be discussed during working business meetings. If an agenda is going to go long, like maybe this one won't, it can be perhaps motion to be discussed during a calendar meeting. But you need to give everyone at least 72 hours and to give the president or administrative assistant, if and when we get one, 4 hours before that in order to be able to put it up on the website and put it into a notice, the first notice that goes out. So 76 hours before a calendar and or working business meeting is the time frame you need. The minimum amount of time, because we know that sometimes urgent things come up, is 28 hours. Okay, if you can't get something to the council and the president within 28 hours, then it goes into before either a calendar or working business meeting, it has to go through the expedited process. Okay, so this is what is considered fair warning to all members of the council. Okay, so that's the notification period. Then the discussion will happen during the either calendar or working business meeting. Any member who wants to speak will be given 3 minutes. Nobody can speak twice until all members who wish to speak have been able to speak. The president can give the council member who is originally presenting that letter a little bit more leeway to present the initial idea. And so then I think everything else in here is then about approval, which it is the standard procedure that we have, that the secretary would call for a motion to approve the letter. And then after that, the indication of whether or not all members want to sign the letter. Okay. That is where, oh, sorry, let me talk about the expedited procedure quickly, and then Janie, maybe you can present the perspectives on the signing of the letter. So an expedited procedure for discussion and approval of letters. So let's say it's tomorrow, and all of a sudden some massively important issue comes up, and either we don't have another working business meeting or we don't have another meeting until February, but there is an issue of urgency. Two things happen. First, it is the same procedure where there's 3 people who work on it and then circulate it to the entire council. If anybody has more than grammatical issues with it, then they can either call for a special meeting, or the president can also say, I don't think that this is actually particularly urgent and this needs to wait for a calendar or business meeting. If at least 8 council members disagree and think that something is urgent, we can overrule the president's determination in that regard. So we did put some fail safes in there. But that otherwise a letter could be discussed as long as the nature of any changes would be non-substantive, and it could then be approved. Or anybody who disagrees or wants to discuss more substantive meetings could call a special meeting. As per our current bylaws, as long as 6 members agree, a special meeting can be called to discuss more substantive changes to the letter. Janie, did I miss anything there? Otherwise, you want to talk about approval?
Oh, no, that was perfect. And I think, you know, we tried to think about all the different scenarios. So it's a little bit worthy, but we're trying to create a decision tree and put it in bullet points. And then, so ultimately what it boils down to is that if a letter is approved, whether normal process of a working business, a calendar meeting, or an expedited process, what does that mean? And the reason why you have option 1 or option 2 is because what we wanted to put out to the committee is option 1 is basically if there is a majority of votes, it would go on the CEC2 letterhead. So if it was unanimous, it would go in the CECD2 letterhead, and it would be signed by Community Education Council District 2. Or if it was approved by the majority, but there were some members who didn't want to sign it, then we would go with the concept. The approved letter would be sent over only with the names who wish to sign. So that's option number 1. Option number 2 is the option where, so long as there's a majority vote, so similar to with resolutions, if there are 6 members that support the letter, then it would go on CECD2 letterhead, and the letter would basically be signed off by CEC Educational Council by District 2. There's no individual names. If it's just like a resolution, if you get 6 votes, then it has a name. So, you know, I think part of it is for the rest of the members, you know, do you have any thoughts, feelings, you know, around the rest of the letter, but also specifically on option 1 and option 2, because that, I think that's the thing that needs to be specifically voted on. You can't have both options.
Lupe, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I remember kind of discussing this at the last meeting, and you guys kind of like clarified my confusion actually about this, because I was concerned that there was some letters that we passed in previous months and that our names, you know, I got the names versus signatory or the undersigned, excuse me. And I thought it was made clear that maybe it wouldn't say the undersigned, but that our names would not be included in those letters. Is this now debating that clarification that we made last month? Because I thought
correct,
it was kind of.
That's correct. So Janie and I went back and forth about this, and we actually went back and looked at all of the letters that had been sent that are archived on the CEC website. And there are a few that went out over CECD2, a condolence letter that was sent, some FOIA requests, etc. There were a few letters that were also sent just over the president's signature that were requests for information, etc. But so far this term, we have here, you know, henceforth only sent out letters over the specific names of those who wish to sign things. So we wanted to open this up for discussion and to hear people's opinions about that.
I know that in form of, resolutions, I think that we also include who voted yes, who voted no, even though the resolution does come from the entire CEC. I think it's quite clear on who voted yes and no. I think it's important to kind of keep that same uniform with the letters, at least, having those that actually support the letter be signatized, and those that are not, I would not appreciate, to have my name on something that I did not support.
Daniela, your hand is raised.
Yes, I apologize that I'm not so much in video. I'm just dealing with a lot of back pain. But what I want to say is that I agree with Lupe. I really don't think people's names should be on the letter if they don't agree with. I think if we have a majority and it passes, it should be on the letterhead. That is officially the CC pass. But I would also not want my name to be on a letter that I don't agree with the content.
Well, just to clarify, the option 2, there's no names listed. All it's going to say is signed by CEC District 2.
Well, but I'm a part of CECD2.
No, I understand, but I'm
right. I get it.
I'm answering Daniela's, because I think, Daniela, do you think that the option 2 is saying that it'll say Community Education Council District 2 and list everybody's names?
Yes, thank you for clarifying. That's exactly what I thought.
No, that's not what option 2 is saying. Is it's on the letterhead, and at the bottom it says sincerely Community Education District 2. That's it. There are no names.
Okay. No, I will be fine with that. Yes.
Kush.
All right. A few different things. One, I did want to point out to just everyone here, not just the council, that we do have a letter that's up for our working business meeting that we put in, which was written at the time in absence of these rules. I just want to point that out. I also just pointing out to the parents that it is in the public documents, and if they do want to make any comments on it for public session 2, that they could take the time to read it before then and make those comments. Sorry, no, that's not strictly this topic, but it's good a time as any to bring that up. Regarding some of, I did want to address some of Lupe's points. So I think in the past we did I think we did the undersigned purely as an accommodation, because at the time we didn't have some guidance, right? But the majority of the council that did pass the letters did feel that it was weakened by saying we the undersigned instead of we the council. And I agree with that. Furthermore, yeah, I'm okay with, I agree that a person's name shouldn't be specifically mentioned if they disagree. But I think in keeping with that, I think it should be allowed to say CECD2, signed by CECD2. I do like that option. I do think Lupe also in the resolutions, it doesn't actually say specifically who voted for what. It just says how many voted for, against, and abstained. Further detail on how that voted, I think you have to refer back to our website. So that information is actually not present on our resolutions. So I understand your concern that detail might not be around on a letter, but it seems kind of awkward to put in a letter. I do disagree with having only 3 people on a letter. I don't think that's been a major issue. I don't think there have been a lot of letters that have been written by more than 3 people. But I think when that does happen, it's done for a reason. It probably references some specific expertise or resolution that they've written in the past, or some knowledge that different people have. And I don't see the need for that specifically. I prefer that to see that as a recommendation for 3 people, which has also been the case for most resolutions, but there have been resolutions where there's been 4 people recently, specifically for the reasons I suggested, and that might apply to a letter as well. I don't see a reason to invoke that clause when it's pretty clear that only more than 5 even potentially breaks open meeting law, and even that I think is a matter of legal debate. And then lastly, I do have one question to both Lupe and Janie. It was mentioned pretty early, and I noticed it's written in the document itself that it shouldn't be, letters shouldn't be done for a resolution, basically as a resolution runaround. Do we think that's been the case so far? Because I don't.
No, I don't think when Ushma and I were drafting this, one, we didn't think that was the case, but we also wanted to be prescriptive to say, okay, let's think outside the box, and to see, we wanted to make sure that it's used for the right reasons, not because it hasn't been, but just to keep everybody on the straight and narrow.
Okay. And then last question, and I'll end. Sorry, can you just clarify, what is the difference between, in the prescription, unanimous versus majority? What is the key difference there and how we proceed?
If every single person wanted to sign this, like it was a happy birthday Kelly McGuire letter, I can't imagine anybody would not want to sign that. So if it was unanimous, then it would go out over, like we would have the choice of either all of our names or just signing it CECD2. In the case we want to send a happy birthday letter to Kelly McGuire, and for whatever reason, I'm just going to pick randomly, Len Silverman didn't want to sign it, we could then list everybody else's names, or the choice could still be to sign it CECD2.
That's fine. We have a recent example, right? So we welcome the chancellor, for example. Okay, thank you.
Robin Broshi.
Yeah, we don't currently itemize who voted in favor of a resolution or not, but I think we should. That's just so, and I think it's instructive to folks. Even though it is in the minutes, then we might as well put it in the resolution. I mean, the fact that for the longest time we didn't even put the tally was, just sort of administrative oversight. And I just think the more information we can put in the finalized version of our resolutions, the better. And then for the same reason, I think, letters, which I, again, like having been on the council for many years, there was never a consistent approach to it. And I'm really glad that Jamie and Ushma are taking this on, and that this council is taking this on, because it is a source of kind of tension, and has been, especially when you have a divided council. So it's really important to have these kinds of guidelines. I think it's nice to reflect, to make sure that the public knows, like, when the council was speaking as one voice, when something passed unanimously, whether it's a resolution or a letter. And when it doesn't necessarily represent the whole view of the council. Obviously, it's easy for me to say that now, because in a lot of the issues that we discuss currently, I know my position is generally in the minority, but like, you do never know when there's going to be a topic that you would prefer your name not to be on. And there's an inconsistency then if our resolutions, even if they don't itemize the names, can communicate that this isn't the position of the entirety of the council, and a letter might give a different impression. And, I agree with Kaushik, we shouldn't assume people are going to use letters as an end run around a resolution, but we should ask ourselves why, in like this one circumstance, it's important to communicate whether or not something was unanimous. And in another context, it's unclear whether something was unanimous.
Okay, thank you. Len, our parliamentarian, please weigh in.
No, first I'm just asking, is there a reason why we can't include approved letters with a unanimous vote and desire to have all council members sign? Can we place over individual names or over the signatory Community Education Council District 2 in option 2? I'm just curious as to why. That's the first question I have. Like, why does that have to be limited to option 1? I know it's late and I'm tired. I'm just wondering, am I missing something?
I think we were just trying to be.
We originally gave the example of a Christmas card, or a holiday card. Why would that option only be available for option 1 as opposed to option 2?
I think we were just trying to make it easy in terms
Yes.
of a distinction of, do we want signatories or do we want it always to just be over CECD2? But I think we are both flexible when it comes to that, if we would like one or the other.
Well, that's the first thing. And then I just want to just comment on what Robin just said. You know, I think when you start to express in resolutions, you know, individuals who voted against it, I don't have a problem if we want to, you know, if a resolution passes unanimously, maybe indicating that it's a unanimous resolution. But I am concerned when we start to, you know, when a law is passed, we don't have the members of our Congress or whatever start to individualize, well, this person didn't vote against them. You can look it up, but we don't include that, you know, in the law and say, okay, this was passed by Congress, but, you know, this senator, or this Congressperson didn't vote for it. I just think it kind of dilutes the fact that as long as you get a majority, that's the council speaking. So I just have a little bit of an issue with, you know, putting, in other words, listing dissenters. It's not like a judicial opinion. It's more, you know, it's something different. It's a resolution. So that's my only hesitancy to do that. But I agree that if something is passed unanimous, why not put it down unanimous or listed this is unanimous? Although it does say at the top, you know, I guess on a resolution is what the vote was. So at least I thought it does on the website, but that's just my 2 cents.
It does say the vote, yay, nay, and absent and abstain, but not by person. Chen, you're up.
Yeah, thanks, Jeannie and Ushma, for working on this. I think the you know, we are part of a system that says, you know, if we have a majority, we respect the majority vote, whether we agree or not with the decision, because we're part of that system. You know, there will be votes where I don't agree with, but it's passed by the body, and we have to respect the body and the institution and the process of that. If we don't, then why have the body? If we say that majority rules, but except when I don't agree, then it's not a real majority. Then it's not valid because I disagree with it. That's not the system we're in, or nor is the system that I would choose to be in. So, you know, we had the discussions before about signatories and having, even though this majority voted and approved, that those who opposed would not put their names on it. And I think, you know, for me now, looking at the options, I think, you know, Janie and Bush are putting the options together. I also agree with Len having that unanimous on both options, but I think we should no longer use names unless it's a unanimous decision. And we just say it's a decision of the council, whether it's a resolution or the letter. We have the record of the votes. We need to keep that. The yays and nays and abstentions, that should be a record. And for the members to be able to say how they individually voted on a piece of resolution or letter, I think that's fair. To say that they voted against or for or abstained, that's fair. But once it's official and a majority has spoken, we all must agree that this is the way it will work, and that we have to stand by the decision, even if we don't agree with it. And we could tell people we didn't agree with it, because that's how our system works. From here as volunteers to people who get paid in city council to state legislatures and the U.S. level, federal level. So I feel that we should keep, go to option 2. We don't need to put names unless it's unanimous, but we have to recognize that once it's approved by by a majority, that the council has spoken, and that should carry the weight that it should have. But we have a record of who dissented and who abstained. Thank you.
Lupe, your hand is raised.
Yeah, I had just two other questions, not about the signatory or the options 1 or 2. So I apologize, I didn't ask them earlier. One was I thought I saw when I read this, when it was first posted, about the 3-minute discussion time, that it also included being able to respond if someone has asked or questions is concerned. Is that still in there? I'm having trouble finding that. And then my second question was, what made you guys come up with 8 council members being needed to, I guess, overrule a president's decision as opposed to 6?
2/3. I'll admit that I was trying to find similar kind of documents out there. Janie and I didn't want to have to create this wheel completely. If there was already one, why recreate it? The only people that had anything similar to this were like faculty senates and things like that. And so that was actually where the idea came from for like the fail-safe of overruling a president. And this standard there, anytime you want to overrule a veto, is usually a 2/3 vote. And it does say in here, discussion of letters should be limited to 1 hour, and no member may speak twice until all other council members who wish to speak have spoken, other than when replying to a question posed to them. Each council member shall be limited to 3 minutes in discussion. The president can allow a longer presentation by the principal council member in the initial presentation of the letter.
Ushma, regarding the president, overriding the president's vote. You were here when Maud Madden was removed, and it took 6 votes. Why would you do the 2/3 vote? Why don't you just remove the president and then put a president that would be aligned with this? I mean, it seems like, you know.
Sure. No, I get it. I'm prepared for that question. Not because of that. That was a vote on an issue. This would be the determination requiring a 2/3 override is because you would, or the president would have made a determination without any feedback from other people. So the only time when the president gets to decide or be the sole decider is in determining the urgency of a procedure or going forward, determining the urgency. So you would be making that determination on your own. And if you said, I don't think this letter is actually urgent, then it requires a 2/3 majority to overrule. This is all open for discussion. I'm basing this on academic faculty senates on here. And Janie and I talked about this and said, in this case, when we're overruling a decision, if you want to make it 6, we'll make it 6, if people are agreeing with that.
Oh, I followed that. And I also looked at Robert's rules, and we can rescind every resolution that we've done in the past with 8 votes, 2/3 vote. So there's past precedent for that. It just, to me, just if people disagree so highly with the president, why not just remove the president? But I get it. You can also just maybe that's just on that one issue. I have an issue with the limiting to 3 people. That goes against a lot of case law for open meetings laws, where you are allowed discussions with less than a quorum. And to have these rules, I also, a lot of this I think should be in the bylaws. It's not just be agreed to rules. It's, to me, it seems like it should be a bylaw that we add to our.
We had to start somewhere.
Oh, I agree. Yeah. No, but I'm just saying you have a lot of this can be added into our bylaws, but I do have a problem. Well, Kush also brought that up with allowing up to 5 people, because what happens if a 4th person or 5th person looked at it and decided they did not want to write it, and then all of a sudden wanted to author it again, or I don't see why we need to limit someone's ability to write or on a topic that's meaningful to them. All right. Does anyone else have any questions? Kush, okay. Oh, and just one more issue. How does, when we have the 3-minute rule, how is that enforced? You know, because we've had some long monologues here. I'd like to know how that's enforced without being on the other side of being the enforcer, because of 3 minutes. How do, if someone starts speaking for more than 3 minutes in this discussion, how do you limit that?
Can I respond?
Yeah.
So our hope is, the reason why Ushma and I created this document is it's an open discussion. So the points that you've brought up, hopefully we can come to an agreement as to what are the appropriate revisions and then take a vote on it. Our thought process is that since we are all in dialogue about this particular agreed upon procedures, that we will honor what we vote for. Okay, we are adults. If we, if we sign on, okay, if this is passed and we all acknowledge and we're all here in person listening to, all the details, no one can say, I didn't know about the 3 minutes. I didn't know about what are the procedures. I didn't, that just makes no sense. So I think part of it is we're trying to put together the prescriptive in which we will all vote on, agree upon, and then hopefully in the future we will abide by it. Okay. And if they don't, then we'll have to police, and it will just be a shame that we as adults can't really, abide to something that we agreed to.
Here.
But Janie, you're making the point that we agreed to, but it could be a majority agreement. It's not necessarily everyone will agree to this, a letter or to this this particular restriction.
But it goes back to what Chen mentioned. It's a majority. You have to.
I agree with you, but I just don't know how to enforce a 3-minute rule when people all of a sudden decide to speak at length. This has become circular, so I understand. I just if you have a great idea about that, I'd like to know. In terms of enforcement. Okay, Kush, you're up, and then Robin Kelleher.
Yeah, I'll be quick. I think I'll be quick. I was going to talk about the record of vote, but I think we talked about that. I do think a record of vote for both resolutions, if a resolution is clunky, I think it's even clunkier in a letter. So I kind of oppose that. I do kind of like the 2/3. There is actually precedent for 2/3, even at, I believe it's at the Senate level. And whatever. There's some cases I think at the federal level where there is 2/3 override in certain situations, and certain circumstances require 2/3 votes. I love that idea. I would like the 2/3 proliferated in some other areas as well, including removal of a president if and when we get to a bylaws committee. So I do take Ben's point that right at this juncture, 2/3 seems silly when you could just have an override to remove the president and then pass the letter anyway. I think that was his point. 3 minutes. I also kind of agree with what Ben said. I feel for him because I like the idea. I don't think we need to talk for more than 3 minutes on something. But it's hard to, anytime we've tried to limit someone and point out that they've spoken for at length on someone, there's been lots of pushback. And I've seen on other councils, and I believe this one, but I'm not confident on this point, but definitely I've seen on other councils, where people do that or object, they're immediately labeled, if depending on who that person is being cut off, they're labeled as racist or misogynist, and that I have real issues with. Anyway, so I see Ben's concern, especially as a president where he might be in the position to enforce this. One area I have some concern on, the timing, the 72 hours. Ushma, in principle, I agree with it. I would prefer, and I know this probably makes it complicated, but I'd prefer if it not be a strict 72 hours and be more the midnight of that night of the 3 days before. I know that there are many councils that operate this way, even for resolutions, even though they have like a 72-hour limit or whatever, 4-day limit. They go by the day and not strict 72 hours. And I mentioned this specifically because the 72 hours presents two problems. One, I pointed out before that I've written a lot of the resolutions for this council, and we often run into an issue where we're trying to get something done by 6:30 because that's the 4-day window before. And people are out running around, picking up kids, finishing up work, doing both, making dinner. And it's really hard to get something done at 6:30.
Push, did you see the second bullet point? I'm sorry to cut in front of you, Robin, but just in particular, that is best practice, is the 76 hours before a meeting. The cutoff is 28 hours.
Right, but that seemed to throw it into a different bucket.
No, so if you cannot meet the 28-hour windows, that's the special expedited thing. If you can meet 28 hours beforehand, it can still be on the agenda for a calendar or working business meeting.
Okay, but then why is there a 72-hour window?
I think what we're trying to do is best practice 72, time crunch 28. Really no time and you want to get it done, that's where you do a special meeting. Okay, so there's like a decision tree of, let's try to do it regular way, you run out of time. Let's try to do 28 hours, you're still too pressed for time. Then you go to special meetings. So we're trying to, give 3 different ways to do it. But I think, again, we're trying to do it in a way such that, we keep hearing again and again, people want as much time as possible to review this stuff. So we're trying to put in guidance that strives for that, but doesn't, lock you down if you can't meet that.
But I'm sorry, then what's the difference between the 72 and the 28? What do I have to justify at the 28?
Can I make a motion that after Robin speaks that we table the discussion until the working business meeting?
That's fine. But yeah,
I'll second that.
Second.
I'll finish with my point is I'd have to write a resolution, then writing a resolution and writing a letter now becomes a similar deadline. And I would like, and I'm not trying to rush it, I just like until midnight to get access to people again after they've dealt with their kids and dinner and coming home from work. That's it. Not at 6:30. It's a weird time to have to get things done.
All right, Robin Kelleher, and then we do the motion vote.
I was going to do the motion, but I also want to say I think the 3 minutes. I do think that we need to look into a way to civilly protect Ben when he's trying to be the bad cop to cut someone off after 3 minutes, because I don't think it's fair to have. It is frustrating when you get cut off, and obviously you feel frustrated by the person who cuts you off, but it's not fair to Ben to have him experience the wrath of whoever's speaking at that moment. So I think we need to be mindful of that. And that's my one concern, the 3 minutes, because I do agree with the 3 minutes. I think we should impose the 3 minutes, but maybe we come up with brainstorm with some ideas as to how to do that without making it Ben's job. Chen, you wrote, we can take turns being bad cop. I don't know, maybe a timer. I don't know what we do, something, but just something that protects Ben a little bit more. But I would like to third the motion to table this.
Okay, point of order. Ushma said she was
I
going.
was joking, Len. Sorry.
No. Ushma said she was going to make a motion after you spoke. Is somebody making the motion now?
I make a motion that we table the rest of this discussion to the working business.
I second it.
Now we can vote on the motion.
Can we just do it by hand? Yeah.
Okay.
I don't see Lily.
You need to say all those in favor.
Yeah.
All those in favor, raise your hand.
Thank you.
No, voice vote. Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed?
Okay. Is Lily on? I don't see her.
Any abstentions?
Oh, I see a Lily. Lily, are you a yes for the motion to discuss the letter in the working business meeting? Okay, I don't.
Let me make sure she's co-hosted.
Oh, she's not co-host. That's why.
Oh yeah,
I can't.
she's not. Yeah. Okay, sorry. You can, Lily. You can raise your hand or speak. Sorry.
So Lily, are you yes for motioning the motion to table the letter discussion to the working business meeting? I'm sorry, did she say yes or no?
乐丽，你现在可以说了，你可以自己 unmute。
She's still saying that she can't vote. She can't turn on her.
All right. I'll try it again.
Talk.
She says she can't talk.
But you can still raise your hand if you want,
She is a co-host.
even with your
你有
camera.
能力，你有能力unmute 自己的，乐丽。
Yes. She's in favor of tabling.
Okay. All right. So the motion is approved to move the discussion to the working business.
You need to just say opposed and you need to do abstention.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Any abstentions? Okay,
No.
none. Any opposed? None. Okay, the motion is approved.
Okay, great. We have the second public speaker session.
Wait,
and
we have
it's 2 minutes.
Hold on, can I make?
Yeah.
Oh,
on the
yeah.
agenda,
I'm
there's-
sorry. I jumped the gun. Item 10, discussion of request to enable chat. Attend the Zoom chat function during calendar and business meetings. You want to discuss this, Kush?
Yes, I wanted to bring it up for a vote again. I think some things have changed, in particular regulation D210. Two, I think we didn't have Councilmember Lilly present for the last vote. Three, we did it at a working business meeting instead of a calendar meeting. I think parents should be allowed to have some input if they choose to do so at the second speaking session. And yeah, three, I reiterate that we are one of the few, well, I don't know if we're one of the few, but I know many of our sister CECs do allow chat. Not only do they allow chat in the working business meeting, some of them even allow chat in the, not only do most of them allow it in the calendar meeting, many of them allow it even in the working business meeting. Some even allow when a chancellor or somebody else, when a superintendent or someone or a guest speaker involves, they even allow guest speakers to question that person directly. I think we are unnecessarily restrictive in this regard. I think it may have been an issue in a previous term. I can say that Robin and I have held several meetings for the Admissions and Diversity Committee, one of which was larger than any meeting we've had here, and we had chat open, and it was not an issue. In fact, we got many compliments from people regarding how interactive it was, and how much parents definitely appreciated it. So, and lastly, I'm in general in favor of free speech. If that means some things get said that aren't pleasant to hear, that's society that we nominally live in, and I'd like to see it reflected here.
Kush, unless other council members who want to make a comment. Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
I just wanted to say, I agree with everything Kush said just now, but I do, we can't have in-person meetings, and I do feel that we're asking a lot of parents to sit here for 4 or 5 hours listening. Having the chat open would be one way for parents to allow themselves to express themselves and to weigh in from time to time. And I think it's only fair that we invite them to comment. And I think that's part of being open and transparent, is to listen, take their feedback. I mean, we don't have to, obviously, if it were to get out of control, we can end, we can delete some of them, but someone is, oh my God, is Michael Trust Fauci is trying to, I guess, prove a point here. But I still agree that people should be able to say what they want to say.
And sorry, one clarification that doesn't count time against me, but I'm not necessarily interested in bringing it up for our working business meeting at this time. Let's just focus on the calendar meeting for now. And then if we want to do that for the working business meeting, that's a conversation we can have for a later time. I think it's moot unless we can do it at the calendar meeting first.
I would like to see a pilot test of it first, like at our next meeting to see if it can work. And if someone is an admin to anyone who's just spewing obscenities, because then you have to remove that person. And there should be a defined what triggers that. And if it works, then it works. Jen?
Yeah, I think those are good points. I think we can take feedback in the second public comment period. But I do think the bulk of it should be as part of the business meeting. We should have some thoughts, like you said, like a pilot. What are some guidelines for appropriate behavior that's not disruptive? And also, how do we solicit comments? Is there a structured way where we can take questions? And I think it's valuable to take questions for those who don't want to speak, to see if they can mention it, especially during, let's say, Superintendent McGuire's presentation or whatever presentation, that can be much more interactive. So I would support that. But I think some ground rules and what's to be expected and what would get someone just, dropped, or what's a situation where we would stop the chats from being posted. What are the thresholds? But I do agree with making it more open rather than closed. But I think we should have some, like, I think the work that Jenny and Ushma did to present first what the thoughts are, then we discuss, rather than now having open discussion. I think it's not a good use of everybody's time. And I do want to have our meetings where we don't have so many resolutions to discuss to kind of finish on time. It's already 9:36. And I know so by way of communicating from the audience members, someone is pointing to his watch that we should move it. So that's a good open discussion type of example. So can we I table it. I want to move it to the business discussion tonight or another night, and let the public second section of the public speaking commence.
Second.
We did, before we vote on this motion that you made, we did have we had two council members that have their hands up, and another one who hasn't spoken, our student council member, had her hand up earlier. So
let everybody speak around and then take a motion.
I think everyone should get at least one round. Is that okay? Will you table your motion till after they speak?
I withdraw my motion until after they speak.
Thank you. Gabrielle, you had your hand up before.
My question was asked. I was curious how we were going to kind of maybe use this like as an interactive method, and then also just like the parameters of it. I think one of the discussions when we talked about this maybe a couple months ago was that maybe part of the out of controlness was when people were like DMing each other. So just, I don't know if we want to maybe think about or talk about now is just like the only way you could chat is like, I was looking at the Zoom functions and it appears to be that you can chat with everyone or you can chat with co-hosts and hosts. And so that was my point. And then of course, my question was going to be like, how would we maybe be using this feedback, or if questions were asked, would someone then be like reading them off? Or if someone says something in the chat, would that be then, I don't know, addressed or spoken at large? But yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Gabriella. Len?
Yeah, I was just curious if you could start, you could enable the chat and then disable it and then enable it again, only because you could have the chat for question purposes. For example, if when Kelly's speaking, you could enable it for questions, and then if you want to enable it just for opinions or commentary at some point, and you could disable it during other periods of time. I mean, I wonder, is that function I don't know much about it. Is that function an option?
Yeah, you can enable and disable on the fly. That goes with the host capability, not the co-host, but the host.
Yeah, because I think that's what, that should be considered. And I do agree with what Jen talked about before. And we had talked about this during our last CEC about a code of conduct. And, that could apply to the chat too. Nothing crazy, but just, basic guidelines where in agreeing to participate at this meeting, you agree to be civil, cordial, not use offensive words, language, things like that.
All right, well, these are all good points here. Chen, did you want to make your motion?
Yeah, I make a motion to, I want to table it for the business meeting, but I also suggest to have kind of a proposal document so we can discuss it with more concrete way. We use an example of the good work that Jenny and Ushma did about the letter writing.
Second, but I'm not volunteering for that.
I thought I'd butter you guys up, but didn't work.
Nice try. You have no idea how many hours Janie and I spent on that already. So.
Did you second the motion, Ushma?
I did.
So can we vote on
it? Janie.
Well, wait, no, we vote on what? Oh, just to table it.
Yes, move it to the discussion of work. So motion to move the chat discussion to the working business meeting. Who is in favor? Just raise your hands. Yay.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Any abstentions? Okay, we're passed.
All right, so the second public speaker session.
Okay, hold on one second.
Sure.
Do we want to go back to Hunter because he was in the first, but he wanted to speak in the second, and then I can post the list.
Unless we should ask Jaden and Dimitri first, because they were also, they didn't show up.
Got it.
They might not be here. I'll see if Jaden's here. I don't see Jaden.
Okay, Jaden, Dimitri, and then I'm just going to post the list.
And I don't see Dimitri. All right.
Okay, so.
And it's 2 minutes now.
I also, I had got a message from one of the parents that accidentally signed up for the first session and meant to sign up for the second.
Yep.
And who was that?
Rebecca?
Yeah, she's on there.
Okay.
So she's on there.
Point of order. I understand what you're doing, what your logic was, Ben, but I don't know if I want to set a precedent. People that don't show up for the first session, then getting to go during the second session, if they weren't here or they weren't available. I think that might set a very bad precedent where people realize, that I'm just concerned.
But no, Hunter was here for the first, and he asked specifically if he could.
I don't have a problem with that because that was agreed.
Okay.
But I think but then you went to.
But they signed up for both sessions. Both Dimitri and I get what you're saying, and I agree with you. But Jaden and Dimitri did sign up for both sessions.
No, I just want to take it in whatever order it's.
Yeah. But they were ahead on the list of Hunter.
Yeah, I just want to establish any crazy precedents here.
Okay. Noted. Hunter, you're muted. Unmuted.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I wanted to talk briefly about the COVID protocol when a child has been exposed. The letter the DOE in their classroom, the letter the DOE sends home to families of children who have been exposed in their classroom provides 4 bullet points and 2 sub-bullets. Those bullets provide sort of a flow chart. The first 2 bullets say kids test on the day they receive the tests. Right? They test on the day that they receive those tests from the school. Then if they are symptom-free, 5 days later, they test again. And after that, they're all clear if they continue to be negative. The third bullet directs kids who develop substantive COVID symptoms to isolate and take a second test. The last bullet says, if that test is positive, then you isolate for 10 days. But there are no more bullets, and it doesn't give families any direction as to what you do if you're negative on the second test, even though you have symptoms. Obviously, you can't go to school if you have major symptoms, and there are exceptions for minor symptoms. But I think it's really confusing, this letter that's coming from the DOE, and I was hoping Kelly might be able to address this, because I've talked to our school and I think that they don't feel like they're in the position to do that. It was confusing when it happened to our family, and the only place we really had to turn was to the health screener. And the health screener says, if you've experienced symptoms and they're now non-existent or only minor, you can't check no on the first question of the health screener. The second choice says that you have had 2 negative test results from a take-home test taken at least 24 hours apart. And this is the important word. It says, since the onset of symptoms. Since the DOE letter says that children have to take the first test on the day they receive the test, they only have 1 test. Possibly a child can't return with the 2 tests that the DOE is sending home with kids. And so, and I think schools are interpreting this, that if you've gotten negative on both those tests, then you can return, but that's not really what the health screener says. So there's some really confusing issues here. And I was hoping that Kelly or somebody in your staff could look at this, and feel free to reach out to me. I'd be glad to explain it in more detail. But I'm afraid that other families may be confused, because ours certainly was. Thank you.
Janie, we have on your list Max again, but he's only listed, he only signed up for
Sorry, only first. Okay.
Yeah. So and I don't see Tom Rockledge. All right, so let's see, Tiffany's here. Tiffany's not there. Okay, Michael Markowitz.
Hi again. Thank you for letting me speak a second time. I'll be brief. First, I support the resolution, and I encourage people in general who feel relatively in the middle about something to support their colleagues who are passionate about something. It's just one more perspective on how to use your votes. It's not, to me as a former council member, something that's just like every issue that comes along I could vote yes or no. It's like I used to feel a certain onus to support colleagues who put in a lot of legwork on something. As to the specifics of that particular resolution, I read it for the first time tonight, and I thought it was really well written, and I got the idea, and I can't imagine what reason anyone could have to vote against it. It's just encouraging better cooperation between DOE and ACS, because as the conversation pointed out also, the 2 different entities use that information quite differently. I'm just trying to imagine some family who decides to take their kid out of school to go, let's say, visit, I don't know, just pick some destination out of state. They go visit for a week, and then they come back, and what, they're going to get met at the airport by ACS because they've been abusing their kid by the... Please, these days of all times, a little more flexibility, a little more understanding, and understand that ACS is effectively a police entity. Parents could get in big trouble for truancy, and it might be totally legit reasons. Again, I just cannot imagine that entity weighing in as hard on one family coming back from a ski trip in Utah as another family where they just weren't quite sure where the kid was. Please support that measure. It's absolutely the right thing to do. Next, as far as the chat function, I've been in meetings where there's hundreds of people and it's contentious. So please consider the middle ground that Zoom does of just allowing the general attendees to correspond with the panelists only, either as a group or individually. And that's how you deal with all that crosstalk. If I want to talk to some other member of the audience and I don't have their cell phone, I shouldn't have access to the DM, but you have to be able to approach the panelists. Thank you for all you do, and thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you, Michael.
Next person is Lilybeth.
Yeah, I don't see her. All right, so then Rebecca is the last one. Rebecca, you're unmuted.
Hi, I agree with the previous speaker on both his support. I also wanted to comment on the issue of ACS. And there were some comments made by members that, you know, where is this issue coming from? And I just wanted to testify that there's actually a longstanding issue of ACS, specifically targeting families of color and families with lower incomes. And although this resolution doesn't address that specifically, there is a carryover because there is not the way that the investigative process works is that while the 60-day investigation, which is required to be open for 60 days, regardless of you know, what the report is, there's not a lot of due process or any due process built into that period. And so ACS can come for one reason, but then find something else. And the way that that affects people who are struggling with poverty is that if an ACS worker, for example, comes to a home because a child has been out of school, but then finds that they, for whatever reason, believe that the apartment is dirty or there's not enough food or something on a given day, they can then use that. And so there's sort of like a layered way that there's bias often built in. And so given the current situation, you know, that continues to be the case, that everybody is struggling with whether or not to send their children to school and, you know, how to all the different regulations that everyone has been discussing about DOE protocols regarding COVID, et cetera. So having a lack of clarity about ACS just creates ACS involvement, just creates sort of like a space or almost like a loophole where families who are most vulnerable can get trapped. And it also creates, unfortunately, it's known by many parents, parent activists. There's major efforts across the city for years to address this issue. This is nothing new. That unfortunately, there are some schools who do use ACS to retaliate against parents who speak up about conditions that they are uncomfortable with at the school. So, you know, hopefully that doesn't happen. Obviously, in an ideal world, it won't happen. But given the situation that we're in, it is still possible that it can happen. And so having this resolution, I think, just adds attention to that possibility. And it puts a spotlight on the fact that while everybody is struggling and scrambling and not sure what to do from one day to the next, we should not simultaneously keep a sort of option for ACS to then also come in and add even more harm to a situation that's already extremely difficult for pretty much everyone. So I really strongly support that resolution. I do know that it is it's an issue that parents and that I know in District 2, as well as educators who are advocates for their students, are concerned about. So it is not irrelevant, I would say. And then I agree with everything that's been said about the chat.
Okay, that concludes the list. Let me just double check to see. Yeah, I don't see anybody else, Ben.
Yeah, it looks like we're done. All right. So our second public speaker session is done. And now we
And I
move
move
on
for
to
approval of
vote
the move for
resolutions.
approval of the resolution 186A.
I second.
Okay, we are voting on resolution 186A. It's yay, nay, or abstain. Robin Broshi, Robin, are you there?
She'll be back. I know she said she had to attend to her son, but I just text her.
Okay, Kaushik Das.
Hello?
Robin's back.
Yes, okay,
Sorry
Robin.
about that. I had a family situation.
No worries. So we're voting on 186A, yay, nay, or abstain.
Yay.
Great, thank you. Kaushik Das,
Sorry. Sorry. Yes.
Daniela,
Abstain.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
I'll abstain.
Abstain, okay. Lupe,
Yay.
Robin Kelleher,
Yay.
Chen Kwok,
Yay.
Benjamin Morden,
Yay.
Ushma Neal,
Yay.
Lim Fong Sim, yay. Leonard Silverman,
Yay.
Lily Wu,
Yay.
Gabriela Calabia.
Yay.
Okay, the motion passes 10 council member votes, 1 student vote, and 1 abstain.
All right. Next item is the approval of minutes. We don't have minutes, though. Janie, if you provide us with the votes from the past few councils, just you can actually title that minutes.
Okay.
And Michelle Chang, who we're all we're wishing her well, that she comes back soon. But she said that would be acceptable for minutes.
Okay, I'll do that.
Okay. All right. Is there any new business for the calendar meeting?
I make a motion to move our business meeting to another date.
Is there a second?
I second it.
If that's the case, then can I bring something up for new business tonight? I was going to wait for working business, but it's time sensitive.
Jennifer Greenblatt, does she have to make a motion to bring that up now, since we moved on to?
No, she
do we
wants
have
to
another
talk-
motion?
You have a motion on the floor. You
Yeah.
can pass the motion and then.
I withdraw my
you can talk
second.
about it now. Excuse me?
I'm going to withdraw seconding the motion.
I'll withdraw my motion until Lupe speaks.
Sure.
And then I'm going to put forth a motion after Lupe finishes that's separate from the other motion that you guys put out.
Much appreciated. New business that I was going to wait for working business, but I do think is time sensitive, is just an update on our AA. And I think it's really important that we kind of get collective in the candidates that we interviewed and discuss moving forward with hiring somebody, because I think we're in definite need.
Lupe, I agree with that, but I'm just curious, what is your definite need?
That we have a discussion about our AA and moving forward and hiring the person that we.
No,
Janie,
I agree with that.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay.
No, I was just curious what your definite need is in terms of the AA.
I think yeah, I think part of I think what she's trying to politely point out is the process is grind to a halt. So
Yes.
yeah. So and so I think where we left things off between Lupe, myself, and Daniela is that we found two candidates that I think meet our threshold. And Lupe and Daniel, please chime in because we hadn't talked about this in advance of that we would feel comfortable opening up to having an additional discussion with some or all of you. Having said that, I would say we reached out to, there are two candidates. I think we spoke to, we identified 4, one didn't show up, one was a pass, and I think there was 2 that we thought, warranted additional discussions.
Yes, thank you, Jamie.
So
Yeah,
if
my suggestion is that the 3 of us get together and then come with a recommendation. I think that is something that the 3 of us need to move forward and then bring to
I
the
thought we did that at our last meeting. I mean, the 3 of us, the meeting that the last 3 of us we had. And the next step was to bring it to the council.
yeah, honestly, I don't, it's been such a long time. So, and I would say, I'm 1/3 of the group, so I'm 1/3 at fault for not remembering what happened. So if maybe tomorrow we can get on the phone for like 5 minutes and do something, come up with a proposal we'll all agree on, and then we can shoot it out to the rest of the council members.
Can I say one thing, because it came up in the FACE meeting today? It's regarding this. If if I understood correctly, there was one member that you guys agreed on that that did previously work for the DOE. If you guys like him or her, and if that was the case, at FACE they did indicate that would be a faster process. I think this all is quite difficult on certainly our president, probably the rest of us as well, probably Janie, probably others. If that is the case, can we just move forward and do that? That would be my vote. And
I mean, I agree with, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's fine. Yes, I find myself in the uncomfortable position of agreeing with Lupe. That was a joke, but
I know.
But yeah, let's move forward on this.
Yeah, I really don't feel the need to take another 5 minutes for us to repeat a conversation that the 3 of us have had. As far as there's 2 candidates, one was, I think we overwhelmingly liked the one that already worked in the DOE, which made things a lot easier. And Aisha did confirm today at our FACE check-in that would expedite, it would be a lot faster if we did decide to hire that person.
Okay, we'll move on. We'll get the process going. A fire's been lit.
Shen, you have your hand raised, and I also would like to add a new business item too. And I know, Robin, you had a motion.
Yeah, I'm just talking about the AA hiring process. Look, I call the committee, right? The AA hiring committee has 2 finalists, but you agree on one very strong candidate. I would just say maybe have a final check, sanity check with Ben as the president, or with Danielle is also in there, right? So just have a final check, sanity check. I trust you guys to have picked the right person. We're not picking the CEO of Disney. So I think, we have someone who's experienced in DOE. If you guys like that person, I would trust you and have a sanity check with Ben. That's good enough. And then we can move forward. That's my suggestion.
So if you want to have a conversation tomorrow, I'm willing to discuss.
Yes, we collectively will follow up with you.
Okay, great. before you make your motions, Robin and Ushma, please, I just need 1 minute to discuss an SCA issue, whether a amendment for a requested capital improvements. I got back an email today after speaking with Face from Aisha George. It was a request on behalf of the council to extend the date. This is the response that we had from Aisha George. I just want to read it into the record. I was able to make a contact with SCA, and they are not able to make an extension to the Friday capital plan due date, given the timeline for the publication of the February 2022 amendment. I was told that the staff need time to review them before the publication. They review all projects, so late submissions will be accepted, but not guaranteed for incorporation into the February 2022 amendment. Late submissions will probably end up being reviewed in the context of the November amendment. So we can still submit them. They may not get into the February amendment, but they'll get into the November amendment. That being said, if you can get me any I guess capital requests by Thursday, I will submit what we have on Friday. Otherwise, I'll submit when we do get. Maybe we can set for the next calendar meeting. If you get me requests by the next calendar meeting, I can then submit for the November amendment plan.
Sorry to interrupt, but don't we have to rank them?
Yeah,
Not
I mean,
just
we would have to be
submitting them,
ranked.
we
Yeah,
have to rank.
you have to, when you submit them, rank what's there, and hopefully, Friday. Maybe let's set a timeline. All submissions by Thursday, and Friday morning, by 12 p.m. noon Friday, rank them, and then I'll submit what we have.
Just to be clear, SCA doesn't incorporate our recommendations. They're saying they'll consider them, but they, whether we get it in time or not, they're considering them in time for February or November, but they're not necessarily going to incorporate any of the recommendations we make into these plans, into these amendments, excuse me.
I read exactly what Aisha George emailed me.
I know, but I'm telling you what our suggestions are recommendations they consider. They aren't actually, they decide whether they want to include them, but we shouldn't assume they will be included. And they don't generally get included.
All right, so we have two potential motions. Robin, did you want to make a motion?
No, change my mind.
Okay.
Okay, so I make a motion to move our business meeting to another date.
Is there a second?
I second.
All right. Janie?
So yes, all right. Motion to move the business meeting to a different day. Yay, nay, or abstain? Robin?
Yay.
Roshi, yay. Daniela?
Yay.
Lupe?
Yay.
Sorry, I missed Kush. Kush?
Yeah, I was gonna say you missed me.
Yeah.
Wait,
Robin? Sorry.
Yeah.
Robin Kelleher?
Yay.
Chen Kwok?
Wait, I don't think Kush
Yay.
vote.
Kush.
I vote no. I don't understand. We're on time, and we these meetings used to end at 10 all the time last term, and then you just move on to the business meeting and get it all done at once. Another night is not better.
Okay, so Kush is no. Daniela's yes. Lupe's yes. Robin's yes. Chen Kwok is yes. Ben Morden?
No.
No. Ushmanio?
No.
Lim Fong Sim? Yes. Leonard Silverman?
No.
Lily Wu?
No.
Gabriela Calabia?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, that's close.
Six council member votes and one student vote. So we move the business meeting to another date.
Wouldn't it have only taken like half an hour? I know the meeting's adjourned, but wouldn't it only take a half
See
an
each other
hour?
again. It'll be so fun.
No, it wouldn't have taken only half an hour, Kush, but I'm with you. I would have stayed too anyways. All right.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. This has been special.
We have to make a motion to adjourn. I make a motion to adjourn.
I could still say thank you.
I second.
Thank you. All right. Have a good night.
Thanks, Ben.
Good night,
Oh,
everybody.
wait. Do we have to vote? We make a motion to adjourn. Let's vote. All hands.
I vote no. I want to go to the next meeting.
We'll just stay on. We'll have an after meeting.
I vote no.
All right. Good night. I'll have to stop the recording.